Chapter 9:28. Jianqin and newbies made their way to the fourth floor together. Behind them, Moji and the other two followed closely. The three of them could sense the change in Jianqin and newbies' attitude towards them. Along the way, they constantly explained what had just happened. Jianqin's group quickly made their way to the fourth floor. They discovered that the fourth floor was empty. Tesniak and the others were nowhere to be seen. They were not there either. "There's nothing here. Let's continue to the fifth floor." Jianqin glanced around and said calmly. He then continued to make his way to the fifth floor with newbies. They did not encounter any obstructions along the way. There were no formations or barriers blocking their way. The palace had a total of 9 floors. The fifth floor was still empty. Next, Jianqin's group cautiously made their way up. They directly passed through the 6th and 7th floor before making their way to the 8th floor without any obstructions. The 8th floor was still empty. However, there were a few spots where the space was hazy. It was a sign that the formations had been activated. Through the hazy space, they could vaguely make out some trapped figures. Everyone, including Tesniak, was trapped within the formation space. 30 meters ahead, there was even the corpse of an expert lying there. He had died to the formations here. His blood had dried up, having been sucked away by the divine hull. "Be careful, there are formations here." Jianqin's group came to a halt when they saw that. They stared ahead sternly. "The formations here are very powerful. They're much more powerful than any of the formations we've encountered before. Let's stick together. It's best if we don't split up. Once we come across formations that we can't break through, we can work together to break through them," Jianqin said sternly before cautiously making his way forward. The formations set up in the palace were extremely profound. Although their power had greatly weakened due to the erosion of time, some high-level formations still retained a lot of their power. There was only one way to go from the 8th floor to the 9th floor, and that was to pass through the obstructions of countless formations. There was no other way. Even flying was not an option. There were hidden formations everywhere on the 8th floor, making it impossible to guard against. After taking 10 steps, Jianqin's group was trapped by a formation that suddenly appeared. At the same time, a violent boom rang out. 100 meters ahead, Tesniak and a few other experts had already broken through a formation, revealing themselves. As soon as Tesniak emerged from the formation, he immediately discovered Jianqin's group. Heavy killing intent immediately flashed through his eyes as he thought, "Ruler of the Turtle Clan, I'll let these formations waste away a little more of your strength. I definitely won't let you leave here alive. The Blood Demon Emperor's cultivation method, the Emperor armament left behind by the human emperor, and the golden tower in your head are all mine. No one has the right to take them from me. Once I obtain the legacy of the 8 wastelands, your life will come to an end." Tesniak and the experts, who had secretly reached a tacit agreement, continued to advance, and soon they were once again trapped in a formation. Although Tiznik had made everyone his enemy not too long ago, there was no such thing as an eternal enemy in this world, only eternal benefits. Under such circumstances, he once again joined hands with several powerhouses, all for the sake of passing through the 8th floor and reaching the 9th floor. Of the 160 experts who had entered the divine hall of the 8 wastelands, only a dozen or so remained. Many of them were injured. They were currently split into 3 groups on the 8th floor. Other than Jianqin's and Tesniak's groups, there was another group that had also entered a formation. They were currently working hard to break through the formations. The formations on the 8th floor became more powerful the further they went. The 3 groups all tried their best to break through the formations because all of them believed that the legacy of the Emperor of the 8 wastelands would be on the 9th floor. As long as they could reach the 9th floor first, they would be able to obtain the legacy of the Emperor of the 8 wastelands. As a result, the 3 groups all used every second they had to break through the formations. They were afraid that the other 2 groups would surpass them. 2 whole days passed. Although Jianshan's group was smaller in number and they had come for fun, they had Jianshan and newbies, 2 supreme experts who could rival the Holy Emperor among them. As a result, they broke through the formations much faster than the other 2 groups. After 2 days of competition, Jianshan's group had completely caught up to the other 2 groups. Currently, the 3 groups had arrived in the middle of the 8th floor. They were only half a distance away from the entrance to the 9th floor. Seeing how Jianshan's group had caught up, the other 2 groups secretly became anxious as well. They immediately sped up as well. All of them wanted to be first. The power of the formations behind them continued to increase, and the speed at which they were advancing became slower and slower. Previously, they only needed to combine their strength to break a formation, but now they had to use all their strength to break a formation. It took a lot of effort for them to break a formation. Boom! With a violent rumble, another powerful formation was broken through, revealing Jianshan's group. Jianshan wielded the saint weapon. Black light surged from the weapon as it was surrounded by a layer of dense, chaotic force. It radiated with a destructive presence. Behind Jianshan were newbies, Mog and Heiyu. After breaking through so many formations, they were exhausted. They had expended a lot of energy. The formations are constantly becoming more powerful. Will there be formations that we can't break through at all? Newbies asked with a deep voice. He was very stern. Basically, all the formations they encountered were trapping formations and killing formations. It would be fine if they encountered trapping formations, but they would be in danger if they encountered powerful killing formations. Jianshan turned around and glanced at the other 2 groups nearby. He lowered his head and pondered for a while before leading them forward. After taking around 10 steps, they were trapped in another formation. The 8th floor of the palace was basically a place filled with formations. There were so many of them that it was unimaginable. No matter which direction they took, they would be trapped in a formation in less than 10 steps. Faced with the endless formations, Jianshan had considered using the White Tiger's ability to ignore all formations and barriers to directly enter the 9th floor. However, after coming to the 8 Wastelands Divine Hall, everything that Jianshan had gone through had changed his opinion of the 8 Wastelands Divine Hall by a lot. He had always had a thought that the Divine Hall was definitely not as simple as it seemed on the surface. Entering the 9th floor might not be to obtain the legacy of the 8 Wastelands Emperors. Instead, there might be other unknown dangers waiting for them. As a result, Jianshan gave up on using the White Tiger. Instead, he used the same method as them to slowly advance. In the blink of an eye, another 3 days passed. During these 3 days, they advanced at an extremely slow pace. They had not even covered a third of the remaining distance. Now that they had reached there, Jianshan and the others needed to stop and recover the energy they had used up whenever they broke through a formation. Even newbies was no exception. Only Jianshan remained brimming with energy, showing no signs of weakness at all. Jianshan had gone through many battles already. As long as he did not exhaust himself like he did in the City of God, the chaotic force within him would be enough for him to use for a very long time. This was because every strand of chaotic force was extremely powerful, so he consumed it much more slowly than regular people. The power and profoundness of chaotic force could not be measured by ordinary energy, because it was a supreme energy of the world. There was no energy that could rival chaotic force in the universe. However, the chaotic force Jianshan possessed right now was not true chaotic force. The chaotic body had been divided into 18 layers by the sword spirits, and each layer was a metamorphosis. Only when Jianshan's chaotic force reached the 18th layer would it become true chaotic force. At that time, the power of chaotic force would be completely unleashed. With the help of regular pills, they only needed a day to recover. They then continued on their way, breaking through the formations. By now, Tesniak had already taken a step ahead of them. They had all consumed high-level pills, so they recovered much faster. Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, another 3 months passed. After 3 months, Jianshin's group finally made it through the remaining journey. They stood before the entrance to the 9th floor. They were currently in horrible shape. Their clothes were in tatters, and their faces were pale and haggard. They seemed like beggars. Even Jianshin was the same. Apart from Jianshin, the others were all injured. They had been on the brink of death many times during this period of time. Tesniak and the other group made their way out at the same time. All of them were in horrible shapes. Their tattered clothes were stained with blood. Clearly, they had suffered greatly under the formations. Both sides had lost people. They had all died to the formations. Ruler of the Turtle Clan, above us is where the legacy of the 8 Wastelands lies. Only one person can obtain the legacy of the 8 Wastelands. I just don't know who will obtain it in the end. Tesniak emotionlessly said to Jianshin before coldly glancing past the people in the surroundings. He knew that their alliance was only temporary. They only wanted to make it to the final step. Once they were faced with the temptation of the legacy of the 8 Wastelands, they would all become enemies. There would no longer be any friendship between them. However, the only person that Tesniak truly cared about was Jianshin. He did not care about the others at all. Jianshin said nothing. He glanced past everyone, whether intentionally or not. In his eyes, there was not a single person who could stand here right now who was mediocre. Not a single person who could make it here could be underestimated. Although many of them were nameless, they were merely hidden. Perhaps there were some among them who were not the slightest bit weaker than Tiznik. However, they were not as dazzling and flamboyant as Tiznik. Chapter 9:29. The 3 groups did not come into conflict. They all stood at the entrance to the 9th floor and studied one another before continuing on their way. All of them were filled with caution. Not only did they have to be wary of the dangers from the palace, but they also had to be wary of anyone in the surroundings. No one dared to be careless. The dozen or so people climbed the long stairs and finally reached the 9th floor. However, when they arrived, everyone was dumbfounded. What appeared in front of them was not the majestic hall they had imagined, but 9 pitch-black passageways. They did not know where they would go. Everyone could not help but stop. They all stared at the pitch-black tunnels with furrowed brows. The light in their eyes flickered. This situation had completely exceeded what they had expected. Do we have to go through these tunnels to reach the 9th floor? An old man in the 3rd group guessed. Jianshin scanned through the 9 tunnels sternly. Afterwards, he expanded the senses of his soul as hard as he could in an attempt to investigate the situation inside. However, Jianshin's soul was suppressed even more here. He was only able to expand his senses to 100 meters away. He could not see as far as the naked eye. We've already come this far. There's no turning back. Whether you want to obtain the legacy of the Emperor of the 8 Wastelands or leave this place, you have to make it to the 9th floor. Newbies, let's pick a random path, Jianshin said sternly. Newbies nodded. That's the only thing we can do now. Afterwards, Jianshin chose a random tunnel and left with newbies. MOG and the other 2 followed them. When Jianshin's group vanished into the tunnels, Tesniak and the other group each chose a tunnel and left as well. The 2 groups remained together. The tunnels were like gourds. The entrance was small, but it was a completely different world inside. When Jianshin's group passed through the long tunnel, they actually arrived in a huge, spacious space that was around 1,000 meters in diameter. Around this space, there were 9 huge stone pillars standing there. The stone pillars were completely blood red and emitted a demonic red light, surrounding the entire space. Boom! Suddenly, a muffled rumbling sound came from behind them. They saw that Jianshin's path of retreat was blocked by a huge stone door. The material of this stone door was exactly the same as the door on the 2nd floor of the palace that was used as a treasure room. Its defensive power was terrifying. The hearts of Jianshin and the others sank. They already had a bad premonition. Suddenly, a powerful energy fluctuation appeared. The 9 stone pillars surrounding the open space emitted a dazzling red light. Then the light intertwined in midair, forming a blood-red dome of light that enveloped the entire space. Aside from the blood-red dome, there were no other colors in the space. Gentian and the others felt as though they were in another space. This is a very powerful formation, and it's a killing formation. Newbie said with a deep voice. His face was extremely stern, and his hands quickly turned golden. He was ready for battle. Gentian's face also became stern. He could sense how terrifying the killing formation was with the king weapon in his hand. Just from its might alone, he could tell that the killing formation was far more powerful than any formation on the 8th floor of the palace. Suddenly, the sound of waves rang out in everyone's eyes. In the sky, a sea of blood that seemed to have been formed completely from blood rained down, turning the space Gentian was in into a sea of blood in an instant. The sea of blood constantly bubbled and churned, as if it had become a surging ocean. Furthermore, Gentian and the others could vaguely see countless vengeful spirits howling at the top of their lungs from the splashing waves from time to time. They turned into sinister and terrifying ghost faces that opened their bloody mouths, wide to bite at everyone. It was a hair-raising sight. A thin layer of bloody mist slowly drifted towards everyone, enveloping them very quickly. The bloody mist had the effect of harming the soul. As soon as it approached them, it immediately invaded their minds, making it impossible to defend against. Gentian and the others immediately felt a piercing pain in their heads. They immediately became dizzy, becoming somewhat delirious. "This is baleful Yin Qi." Gentian cried out. Disbelief filled his face. The baleful Yin Qi was exactly the same as the baleful Yin Qi he had sensed from the 4 protectors of the Bloodsword sect. Gentian had gained some understanding of baleful Yin Qi on the Tianyuan continent. It was said that it was a special energy formed from slaughter. Aside from the 3 great assassin organizations, the Bloodsword sect, no one could grasp this power. Baleful Yin Qi possessed the wondrous effect of affecting the mind. There was no way to defend against it at all. The only option was to endure it. It was said that if the baleful Yin Qi was powerful enough, it could even directly disperse the soul of the target, wiping them out. It was extremely powerful. Only the assassins of the Bloodsword sect can cultivate baleful Yin Qi. How can there be such power here? Gentian constantly questioned himself. He was extremely unsettled. After all, this was the divine hall of the 8 wastelands, the former residence of the 8 wastelands emperors. Yet, the formation here actually possessed baleful Yin Qi. Did the former emperors of the 8 wastelands possess this power as well? Fortunately, the baleful Yin Qi was not powerful. It was not enough to wipe out Gentian and the others. At most, it would affect them slightly and hinder them from using their strength. Suddenly, the sea of blood began to churn even more violently before slowly condensing into a 100-meter-tall, blood-red giant. It radiated with a great presence. The blood-red giant's appearance was unclear, but it gave off an indomitable feeling as it stood there. It radiated with a great pressure, as if it was a god of the world. At this moment, the blood-red giant moved. It directly extended a finger towards Gentian and the others. With that finger, its arm began to elongate and its finger expanded. It actually extended to a distance of several 100 meters, shooting towards Gentian and the others with a great pressure. Gentian's saint weapon shone with a black light as a destructive energy filled the space. Newbies' palms shone with golden light as powerful energy constantly pulsed from them. MOG and the others all took out their weapons and unleashed their full strength. Afterward, they all worked together and unleashed their strongest attacks at the blood-red giant's finger. Boom! With a great rumble, their attacks collided with the blood-red giant's finger. Immediately, a violent shockwave of energy wreaked havoc in the sea of blood. The blood-red giant's finger paused, and its forward momentum came to a halt. On the other hand, Jianqin and the others were all blown away without exception. They all paled. Newbies and the others all vomited blood. They were already heavily injured. Jianqin also had blood flowing from his mouth. He was also heavily injured. After the 5 of them flew back tens of meters, they hit the edge of the formation and fell to the ground. Immediately, a few mouthfuls of blood spurted out from their mouths. Jianqin stood up with a flip and stared at the blood-red giant in shock. His face was extremely grim. The blood-red giant's strength had far exceeded their expectations. Jianqin had already determined that the blood-red giant's strength was at least on par with the Holy Emperor's 5th heavenly layer, or even 6th heavenly layer. It was definitely not something they could deal with. Damn it, this formation is too powerful. It actually created such a powerful thing. How can we be a match for it? Newbies cursed as he got up from the ground. He immediately took out a bunch of Tier 6 Radiant Shrine pills from his spatial ring and stuffed them into his mouth. MOG and the other 2 also took out jade bottles from their spatial rings. At the same time, they poured out jade green medicinal pills and consumed them with pained expressions. The medicinal pills they consumed were clearly much more effective than the Radiant Shrine pills. Their complexions immediately changed at an unbelievable speed. Their recovery speed was even faster than Newbies'. A tremendous pressure appeared from behind, and the blood-red giant moved once again. The same finger shot toward Jianqin and the others with a terrifying pressure. The 3 of them were filled with despair. The blood-red giant was just too powerful. They were still heavily injured, so they could not block the second finger. Jianqin stared at the approaching finger. Suddenly, a golden light shot out from between his eyebrows, and the saint artifact appeared in his hand. He immediately opened the door, and a soaring sword chi immediately surged out. The Emperor armament that had been trapped by the artifact spirit flew out with the soaring sword chi. As soon as it left the artifact space, it collided with the huge finger. With a boom, the blood-red finger shattered from the attack of the Emperor armament. It turned into a sea of blood that fell to the ground, but it all flowed toward the blood-red giant in the next moment, fusing with its body. The blood-red giant's arm regrew. At that moment, its attention was focused on the Emperor armament. Its huge, blood-red hand directly reached toward the Emperor armament. The Emperor armament was infuriated. It radiated with a powerful sword chi and chopped off the giant's hand in a single stroke. However, the blood-red giant was an unkillable existence. The severed arm immediately turned into a sea of blood and fused with its body, allowing it to regenerate. I hope the Emperor armament can destroy the blood-red giant. Newbies was overjoyed. He seemed to have seen the flames of hope right now. Even the 3 of them were the same. However, what the Emperor armament did next exceeded their expectations. It no longer tangled with the blood-red giant. Instead, it flew to the edge of the formation and slashed at the space there, creating a huge hole in the formation. Afterward, it flew out and fled. Jianqin and the others were stunned, but they soon returned to their senses. They all charged toward the hole as quickly as they could. At that moment, they pushed their speed to the limit. With the assistance of a secret technique, Newbies was at the very front. He was the first to leave the formation, followed by the 3 of them. Jianqin was the last because he was further away from the hole. Chapter 930. Jianqin and the others were stunned, but they soon returned to their senses. They all charged toward the gap as quickly as they could. At that moment, they all pushed their speed to the limit. With the assistance of a secret technique, Newbies charged at the very front. He was the first to leave the formation space, followed by MOG, Heyu, and Heyu. Jianqin was the last because he was further away from the gap. The blood-red giant in the formation space was at least at the 5th heavenly layer of the Holy Emperor. Its strength was not something they could contend against. If they continued to stay there, only death would await them. Now that the gap had been created by the Emperor armament, it obviously became their target of escape. All of them knew that this was probably their only chance at survival. As a result, they all pushed their speed to the limit at that moment. Don't even think about escaping, Emperor Armament. If I can collect you once, I can collect you again. Jianqin turned into a blur as he shot toward the gap with lightning speed. Jianqin had used the Emperor Armament because he had no other choice. Probably only the Emperor Armament could contend against the blood-red giant on him right now. However, he had never expected the outcome. The blood-red giant was indeed not the Emperor Armament's opponent, but the Emperor Shi's Emperor Armament did not destroy the blood-red giant as he had hoped. Instead, the Emperor Armament had escaped by itself. Jianqin's head was filled with the Emperor Armament. Now that the Emperor Armament had escaped, he became extremely worried. He knew that the Emperor Armament probably possessed a sliver of its previous owner's soul, so it possessed some intelligence. It would definitely be on guard after suffering from the Saint artifact once, so it would not be so easy to collect it in the next time. Very soon, the three of them arrived at the edge of the gap. Jianqin arrived less than 10 meters behind them as well. However, just when the three of them were about to leave the formation space, a cold light flashed through their eyes. They suddenly turned around and sent a palm strike at Jianqin. Although the three of them had yet to recover from their injuries, the might of the 3 palm strikes was not to be underestimated. 3 massive waves of energy shot towards Jianqin, who was less than 10 meters behind them. Jianqin was currently worried about the Emperor Armament. He had never thought that the 3 of them would attack him at a time like this. By the time he returned to his senses, the 3 huge waves of energy had already arrived before him. Jianqin's face abruptly changed, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. At this critical moment, the Emperor Saint weapon in his hand slashed out like lightning, colliding with the powerful energy coming from the 3 of them. With a loud rumble, the violent energy shockwaves hit Jianqin's body wave after wave, immediately stopping his forward momentum. Soon after, his body was pushed back uncontrollably, only stopping after being pushed back several hundred meters. At this moment, the crack from the Emperor Armament rapidly closed up. It was possible to see the 3 of them through the crack. They were currently staring at Jianqin with a sneer on their faces. Jianqin's face was extremely sunken. A powerful killing intent radiated from his heart uncontrollably, causing the surrounding temperature to plummet. The crack closed up extremely quickly, so Jianqin no longer had the ability to escape. "MOG, Jianqin will definitely kill you," Jianqin coldly said. His icy cold words that seemed to come from the mouth of the Grim Reaper were clearly heard by the 3 of them. With that, the crack in the formation space completely closed up, trapping Jianqin once again. The empty space outside the formation had been enveloped by a huge, blood-red barrier, only leaving behind an extremely narrow tunnel. MOG, Heiyu, and newbies were currently in the narrow tunnel. Newbies saw everything that had just happened, and his face sank in a single moment. He radiated with a tremendous killing intent that surged into the sky. "How dare the 3 of you touch Jianqin? The great Newbies, will tear you to pieces." Newbies' eyes were red as he immediately reached toward the 3 of them with his golden hands. At that moment, the 3 of them seemed to have become completely different people. Although they had witnessed Newbies' strength, they completely ignored Newbies' attack. Their eyes were filled with disdain. A vast amount of energy gushed out from their bodies, quickly condensing into a set of armor on their bodies, protecting their entire bodies. Newbies' claws landed on the 3 of them, but they were actually unable to get through the armor. They were knocked back a few steps. "This is the power of the Holy Emperor. Didn't you use up the power of the Holy Emperor within you long ago? You actually still have it." Newbies was surprised and immediately became rather stern. The 3 of them immediately sneered when they heard that. One of them said, "Used up? Hee, that's just to trick you. Newbies, the power in us may not have been left behind by experts like Hall Elders, but it's still at the 16th star. Do you think you can get through it with your strength? Newbies coldly said, Do you think you can obtain the legacy of the Emperor of the 8 Wastelands just like that? Don't forget that aside from Jianshin, there's also Tiznaiki. Without Jianshin, you won't be able to defeat Tiznaiki with just the power of the Holy Emperor, who said, We wanted to fight over the legacy of the Emperor of the 8 Wastelands. Moji said. He looked at newbies scornfully. Our ultimate goal is not to fight over the legacy of the Emperor of the 8 Wastelands, but to kill the 3 of you. If it weren't for the fact that there were just too many people ahead and we were worried that someone would spread the news and drag our clans into it, the 3 of us would have taken action long ago. However, this is perfect. We can use the power of the formation to kill off Jianshin, leaving behind a portion of our strength. The remaining strength of the 3 of us is enough to eliminate you. What? You've come here to kill us? Newbies was surprised. This outcome had completely exceeded their expectations. That's right. You've offended the Serpent God Hall. Do you really think you can relax after hiding in His Majesty Poseidon? Moji said, I see. So you're from the Serpent God Hall. Newbies came to a realization. We're not from the Serpent God Hall. We've only been asked to do so by them. Newbies, since you know everything now, it's time for us to send you on your way. Ice-cold killing intent appeared in the eyes of the 3 of them. Afterward, the tremendous power of the Holy Emperor surged out of their bodies, forming 3 sea beasts that roared out furiously. They charged at newbies aggressively. This was not their own power. Instead, it was the power of the Holy Emperor that had been left in them by a 16-star expert who was at least at the 5th heavenly layer of the Holy Emperor. It was extremely powerful. Newbies was stern. He turned around and fled. Although he was confident, he did not believe he could block such a powerful attack. A casual attack from a 16-star expert could heavily injure him. If he had to take on the combined attacks of 3 16-star experts, he would only be half dead even if he managed to survive. Most importantly, he had no idea what level of cultivation the person who had left behind the power of the Holy Emperor was. Was it the Holy Emperor at the 5th heavenly layer, or the Holy Emperor at the 8th heavenly layer? Or was it the Holy Emperor at the 9th heavenly layer? However, Newbies was unable to escape from the pursuit of the Holy Emperor's power. He was caught very quickly. Newbies threw caution to the wind when he realized that he could not escape. He roared at the sky, and golden and silver light emerged from his body, immediately condensing into fine scales that covered every inch of his body. Golden and silver flames burned on the scales. The flames burned brighter and brighter, and under the flames his scales actually began to swell at an unbelievable rate. Newbies' face was filled with pain. He gritted his teeth and called out, Legacy's secret technique, gold-silver phosphorus explosion. The gold-silver phosphorus explosion was a self-harming method of attack. It used a secret technique to trigger the explosion of all the scales to injure the people around it. Not only was it extremely powerful, but it was also poisonous. However, the price of using this secret technique was too high. Not only would one's vitality be greatly damaged, but one would also lose all the scales on one's body. One would have to endure tens or even hundreds of years of pain to slowly recover their vitality. Then they would have to shed their skin and grow new scales. Newbies, I'm here. Stop. At this moment, Jianshin's voice entered Newbies' ears. Newbies' eyes lit up. He subconsciously stopped using the legacy secret technique. Then a golden light shone in front of him. He saw a golden pagoda fly through the sky and block his path. This golden pagoda was 10 meters tall and 2 meters in diameter. It landed heavily on the ground, causing the ground to tremble slightly. Newbies blocked the 3 attacks of the Holy Emperor's power. Boom! The 3 attacks of the Holy Emperor's power collided with the golden pagoda. However, the golden pagoda did not move at all. Newbies, who stood behind the pagoda, was not injured at all. Soon after, a loud tiger's roar rang out. A white figure flashed, and a majestic white tiger appeared behind the three of them. The white tiger was 3 meters long and had a pair of wings on its back. As it stood there, a pressure immediately radiated from its body, as if it was a king that had descended upon the world. Its presence was even denser than the Holy Emperor's. A figure sat on the white tiger's back. It was Jianchen. When the three of them saw Jianchen behind them, their eyes immediately widened. Disbelief filled their faces. Jianchen, you've actually escaped. How is this possible? You've actually escaped from the formation. Have you already broken through the formation? Impossible. The crack from the Emperor armament has already healed. How did you escape? Chapter 931. When MOG and the other two saw Jianchen behind them, their eyes widened in disbelief. Jianchen, you actually escaped? How is this possible? You actually came out of the formation. Could it be that you've already broken the formation? Impossible. The crack from the Emperor armament has already healed. So how did you get out? MOG and the other two exclaimed in shock. Their faces turned ugly. Jianchen held the king's sacred weapon in his right hand as he rode on the back of the majestic white tiger. He coldly stared at MOG and the other two. An intense killing intent was emitted from his body. Although I knew that this would happen sooner or later, I never thought that you would actually be assassins sent by the serpent god Hall. Jianchen said coldly. He had heard every single word that MOG and the other two had said. Back in the Poseidon Hall, MOG and the other two had actively sought out Jianchen. They wanted to enter the 8 Wastelands Divine Hall with Jianchen. This was actually a plan that the three of them had come up with long ago. Their goal was to approach Jianchen and find a good opportunity to eliminate Jianchen, MOG, and MOG so that they could complete the mission the Serpent God Hall had given them. In order for the three of them to eliminate Jianchen's group successfully, the experts of the Serpent God Hall went to great lengths to leave behind abundant Holy Emperor's power in their bodies. The three of them had hidden the 16th star Holy Emperor's power extremely well, only revealing it now. The fourth person who had joined Jianchen's group was a complete coincidence, but he had already died. Although the three of them were extremely surprised that Jianchen could break out of the formation, they were still 9th Heavenly Layer Saint rulers after all, so they calmed down very quickly. Killing intent immediately filled their faces. One of them sneered, Jianchen, I never thought that you'd be so lucky. You're actually still alive after falling into such a powerful formation. Since the formation hasn't killed you, let the three of us eliminate you. You'll definitely die today. Vast amounts of Holy Emperor's power surged out from the three of them, condensing into sea beasts in front of them in a single moment. They furiously roared as they charged toward Jianchen. The amount of Holy Emperor's power they used this time was clearly much greater than before. As the 3 sea beasts shot through the air, an extremely tremendous pressure immediately pressed down on Jianchen, suffocating Jianchen. Jianchen was stern. He had come into contact with 5th Heavenly Layer Holy Emperor experts many times in the past, so he was extremely familiar with the power they used. He had already determined that the owner of the power was definitely at the 5th Heavenly Layer of the Holy Emperor from the three of them. Although they were not at the level of Hall Elders, they were close. Jianchen did not dare to receive such a powerful attack head-on. He gently patted the white tiger's back with his left hand, and the white tiger seemed to have received some sort of order. It actually leapt into the blood-red barrier beside it and entered the formation again. The power of the Holy Emperor passed through where Jianchen had been standing with a tremendous pressure, heavily slamming into the wall in front of him. Boom! With a great boom, the entire hall gently shook. The attack from the three of them, using the power of the Holy Emperor, was enough to shake the entire hall. It was no weaker than an uncontrolled Emperor armament. A white figure appeared behind the three of them in a flash. The white tiger ran out of the formation with Jianchen, arriving behind the three of them silently. Without any hesitation, Jianqin immediately leapt off the white tiger's back and shot toward the three of them with lightning-like speed. He stabbed out 3 times with the saint weapon in his hand, which glowed with black, chaotic force. Ding, ding, ding. Before the 3 of them could react, the saint weapon had already struck the back of their heads. However, they were protected by the armor condensed from the Holy Emperor's power, including their heads. Jianqin's attack failed to injure them at all. The force from the saint weapon caused the 3 of them to stumble a few steps forward. Fine cracks had already appeared on the armor condensed from the Holy Emperor's power behind their heads. Jianqin was unable to destroy the armor condensed from the power of the Holy Emperor in a single strike, but he could still damage it slightly. Jianqin did not stop at all. With a sudden jerk of his arm, the saint weapon continued to stab out as a blur, completely enveloping the 3 of them. With a series of clangs, the 3 of them were hit over a dozen times in a short moment by Jianqin's attacks, causing web-like cracks to appear on their armor. They rapidly spread across their bodies. The 3 of them revealed drastically different expressions. The Holy Emperor's power within them immediately broke free, borrowing the power of the Holy Emperor to deal with Jianqin again. Jianqin knew how terrifying the Holy Emperor's power was, so he did not try to fight back. He extended his hand and beckoned. The 10-meter-tall saint artifact immediately flew over from behind him, blocking the attacks from the 3 of them. It took on the Holy Emperor's power for him. The powerful attacks from the 3 of them that could shake the palace struck the sacred artifact. However, the sacred artifact didn't even shake. It had taken on such a powerful attack without any effort. "I'd like to see just how much more of this power you have," Jianqin coldly said. Jianqin said coldly before using the saint artifact as a cover. He continued to launch a barrage of attacks at the 3 of them. The power of the Holy Emperor within the 3 of them ran out very quickly after such a huge expenditure. Without the Holy Emperor's power to rely on, they lost the ability to contend against Jianqin. Very soon, they were slain by Jianqin's sword, wiping out their souls. With their deaths, their blood was rapidly sucked away by the Divine Hall. They were reduced to dried-up corpses very soon. Jianqin walked up and took the space rings from the 3 of them. The saint artifact shrank back to the size of a palm and flew into his hand. He then walked up to the white tiger and gently stroked its snow-white fur. He said, "Little White, it's too dangerous here. It's best if you go back to the artifact space and work hard to increase your strength." The white tiger had been consuming heavenly resources to cultivate during this time, so its strength had increased extremely quickly. It had already reached the level of a Class 6 magical beast. Its strength was equivalent to a 5th cycle Heaven Saint Master. Its speed was astounding. After all, it had only been a few years since the white tiger had been born. The white tiger did not resist. It let out a deep roar and entered the artifact space. Jianqin arrived before Newbies. He looked at Newbies' rather pale face and asked in concern, "Are you fine?" Newbies stared at the 3 corpses with a sunken face. He gritted his teeth and said, "I never thought that the 3 of them would actually be assassins sent by the Serpent God Hall. Jianqin, it's fortunate that you appeared in time, or I, the great Newbies, would have been skinned alive." Jianqin chuckled with that. He glanced around, and in the end his gaze landed on a nearby door. A meter-wide hole had already appeared on the door. The Emperor armament should have left from there. The door should lead to where the legacy of the Emperor of the 8 Wastelands is. "Let's go," Jianqin said before making his way toward the door with Newbies. Jianqin did not let Xiaowang out. With Xiaowang's current strength, he would only be of some use when they first entered the Divine Hall. However, they had already reached the end, and the dangers they would face later would be far greater than before. If Xiaowang was let out, not only would he not be of any help, he would even become a burden to them. He might even lose his life for nothing. Jianqin and Newbies made their way toward the door that had been opened by the Emperor armament. In the end, they entered a long corridor. The corridor was gloomy. It was long and winding. Jianchen and newbies cautiously made their way through the silent corridor. After advancing for a few kilometers, the area before them suddenly opened up. In front of him was a splendidly decorated hall. The hall was very spacious, at least 100 meters wide and a few hundred meters long. The things inside were in a mess. All kinds of decorative fragments were scattered everywhere. There were traces left behind by the passage of time, as if a great battle had taken place here a long time ago. Jianchen glanced around, and his gaze froze very soon. He saw 5 figures standing 100 meters in front of him. How did they get here so quickly? Newbies discovered the figures as well, and his face was filled with surprise. The 5 figures were from the other 2 groups. One of them was Tesniak. They had actually made it here before Jianchen. When Jianchen discovered them, the 5 of them discovered Jianchen as well. They all looked over and stared at Jianchen and newbies closely. "Ruler of the Turtle Clan, you're a little slow," Tesniak emotionlessly said to Jianchen. Jianchen and newbies made their way over the countless pieces of ornaments. Jianchen said, "I originally thought that I would be the first to arrive, but it looks like I'm the last one." Jianchen and newbies stopped 20 meters away from them. They constantly glanced at the other 4 people. "Ruler of the Turtle Clan, I originally thought that only the 2 of us would be able to make it here, but I never thought that I would be wrong. The 2 of us aren't the only ones who can make it here. There are a few other friends who have been hiding their strength," Tesniak coldly said as he stared at the other 4 people. Chapter 932. Among the 4, the middle-aged man was in the same group as Tesniak. He had been hiding very deeply and kept a very low profile. That was why he had stayed by Tesniak's side for so long without being discovered by Tesniak. Tesniak's sharp gaze swept over them, and then he looked towards the depths of the hall, a burning look in his eyes. In the depths of the great hall, there was a huge stone statue standing there. The stone statue had the appearance of a middle-aged man. The sculpture was extremely lifelike, as if it was a real person. It was filled with charm. He seemed to have completely fused with the world as he stood there. He had become one with the world, where there was no distinction between the 2. Gazing at the stone statue, everyone standing in the hall felt as if there was a vast pressure pressing down on their souls, making them want to prostrate themselves in worship of the stone statue. "Is this the Emperor of the 8 Wastelands?" Jianchen struggled to remain calm as he stared at the huge statue. However, Jianchen soon thought of what Elder Hong had told him. He looked around and thought, Elder Hong said that the most precious thing in the divine hall of the 8 Wastelands is this divine hall other than the legacy of the Emperor of the 8 Wastelands. As long as I can find the core of the divine hall, I'll be able to control it, but where is it? Jianchen, why isn't the Emperor armament here? Where did it go? Suddenly, Newbie's voice rang out in Jianchen's head. Jianchen was slightly surprised when he heard that. A gleam of light flashed through his eyes, and he looked around carefully. He actually failed to find any traces of the Emperor armament. Why is it like this? We clearly made our way here through the door the Emperor armament opened. So why is there no trace of the Emperor armament here? Jianchen thought inside as his face became unsettled. At this moment, Tesniak's voice rang out. If I've guessed correctly, the legacy of the 8 Wastelands must be in that statue because it's the only thing that remains intact here. However, there are 7 of us here right now, and only one of us can obtain the legacy of the 8 Wastelands. Do you have any good plans to deal with this? The light in everyone's eyes immediately flickered when they heard that. They all cautiously stared at the surroundings to avoid any sudden attacks. All of them were tempted by the legacy of the 8 Wastelands. They had spent so much effort to make it here. So how could they give up so easily? The hall immediately fell into a deathly silence. The 7 of them stood there silently as the atmosphere became extremely oppressive. A faint killing intent gradually permeated the hall. Let me see if the legacy of the 8 wastelands is in the statue or not. The oppressive atmosphere in the hall was finally broken. The old woman extended a finger, and immediately a strand of the Holy Emperor's force shot out, viciously colliding with the statue. Tisnike and the others did not stop her. Instead, they stared at the statue. They weren't sure if the stone statue was the 8 barren great emperor or not. They also didn't know if the stone statue contained the 8 barren great emperor's inheritance. They all wanted to use the old woman to test the stone statue's authenticity. Boom! The statue was even more fragile than they had imagined. The old woman's holy emperor's force easily destroyed the statue, causing it to scatter in all directions. Seeing this scene, everyone's faces were filled with disappointment. It had been destroyed so easily. They did not dare to believe that the 8 barren great emperor's inheritance had been left behind in the stone statue. However, at this moment, a ball of azure light appeared from the shattered statue. A ball of azure light silently hovered in the air above the head of the statue, emitting a hazy azure light. Everyone in the hall, including Jianqin, immediately stared at the ball of azure light. Tisnike could not help but cry out, "Is this the legacy of the 8 wastelands?" Everyone's expressions changed when they heard Tisnike's words. Their eyes immediately burned with desire. Even Jianqin and newbies were no exception. This was the legacy of a holy emperor. It contained all of the holy emperor's knowledge and comprehension of the mysteries of the world. If they obtained it, reaching the level of a holy emperor would only be a matter of time. Something's not right. Suddenly, Jianqin's eyes narrowed. He stared closely at the ball of azure light as surprise and uncertainty filled his eyes. His soul was extremely powerful, far surpassing Tisnike and the others. At this moment, he could actually vaguely sense the pulses of a soul within the azure light. Although it was very weak, it was extremely active. That soul is awake. The azure light is a seal to prevent the pulses of the soul from spreading out and being sensed by others. Jianqin suddenly thought of something like that, which made his face pale slightly. When he thought of the various strange things he had encountered after entering the divine hall of the 8 wastelands, he suddenly reached an unbelievable conclusion. The emperor of the 8 wastelands was still alive. A few whistles suddenly rang out. Tisnike and the 4 others had already charged towards the ball of azure light. They moved as fast as lightning. Newbies did not hesitate at all. However, just when he wanted to join in, Jianqin suddenly grabbed his shoulder and said, "Don't go! This matter isn't as simple as it seems." After all these years together, Newbies had basically become a blind newcomer to Jianqin. When he heard Jianqin's words, he immediately suppressed his impulses and did not join in. Tisnike and the 4 others arrived before the ball of azure light with lightning-like speed. They actually extended their hands towards it at the same time. At this moment, something happened. The azure light suddenly vanished, replaced by a dazzling, blood-red light. Before Tisnike and the others could react, it shot towards the 5 of them with unbelievable speed, disappearing into their heads in a single moment. Ha 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 ha! The Emperor has finally waited for this day. The day when the Emperor reappears is not far away. Poseidon Hall, Serpent God Hall, Heaven's Spirit Hall. Once the Emperor possesses you, the Emperor will destroy all of you before long. Wild laughter rang out in the air. It was extremely arrogant. The sudden change caused Jianqin and newbies to become stern. In particular, the wild laughter that had appeared out of nowhere made Jianqin and newbies' hearts sink to rock bottom. Is this the voice of the Emperor of the 8 Wastelands? The Emperor of the 8 Wastelands is still alive? Newbie's voice trembled slightly. At that moment, he and Jianqin both understood that the divine hall of the 8 Wastelands was actually a scheme for the Emperor to be reborn. Jianqin's face was extremely sunken. He said, "I finally understand why the blood of those people and vicious beasts would suddenly be absorbed by the divine hall. So it was all part of the Emperor of the 8 Wastelands scheme. Right now, the Emperor of the Eight Wastelands only has his soul left. After slumbering for so many years, his soul must have become extremely weak. He needs to absorb the essence of the blood of those experts and vicious beasts to recover. Nubes' face became extremely ugly. He said in a hurry, "Jianqin, we can't stay here any longer. Let's leave quickly." Jianqin shook his head, powerlessly. So the divine hall of the Eight Wastelands is a trap. The so-called legacy of the Emperor of the Eight Wastelands is all fake. No wonder we couldn't find the way out earlier. We can only enter the divine hall, not leave. There's no way out at all. We can't leave now. The 5 people who had been shot by the red light all cried out miserably. They all clutched their heads in pain as they rolled on the ground. "Ha ha ha, there's actually a king as well. Then the Emperor will choose you." The arrogant voice rang out in the empty hall once more. Afterwards, several explosions rang out. Aside from Tisnike, the heads of the other 4 people all exploded. Their souls were wiped out. Afterwards, the red light that had burrowed into their heads all squeezed into Tisnike's head. These red lights were the primordial spirit of a person. The Emperor of the Eight Wastelands. You're the Emperor of the Eight Wastelands. You're actually still alive. Tisnike roared out in pain. His face had already paled. He could sense that his soul was gradually being devoured by an even more powerful soul. "The Emperor of the Eight Wastelands, you can forget about devouring my soul." Tisnike's eyes flashed with rage. A fierce light shone in Tisnike's eyes. Soon after, an extremely terrifying energy ripple radiated from his body, filling the entire hall with a world-destroying might. The hall began to shake violently. At that moment, it seemed like the entire divine hall of the Eight Wastelands was shaking gently. The powerful energy radiating from Tisnike was enough to destroy the entire divine hall. "God damn it, this is Emperor's power. You actually have Emperor's power within you," the Emperor of the Eight Wastelands cried out in fear. He had once been an emperor, but he was only a weak soul right now. It was more than enough to deal with saint rulers like Tisnike, but he could not resist Emperor's power at all. Just a strand of Emperor's power was enough to wipe him out. Immediately, the Emperor of the Eight Wastelands no longer dared to remain in Tisnike's body. His soul immediately flew out, flying toward Jianqin and Nubes as a blood-red streak of light. The Emperor of the Eight Wastelands' soul flew extremely quickly. It arrived before Jianqin in the blink of an eye and directly burrowed into Jianqin's head before Jianqin could even react. Jianqin's face changed, and he paled in a single moment. His facial muscles constantly twisted, clearly in great pain. However, Jianqin's soul was far more powerful than Tisnike's. Although the Emperor of the Eight Wastelands' soul brought him great pain, it was still within a range that he could endure. "Jianqin, Jianqin, are you all right?" Nubes' cries rang out, but Jianqin could no longer hear them. His consciousness had entered his sea of consciousness with the Emperor of the Eight Wasteland soul. At this moment, Jianqin's figure appeared out of nowhere in his sea of consciousness. Before him was a young man who seemed to be in his 20s. The young man wore blood-red robes, and his face was filled with evilness. Even his eyes and hair were blood-red, as if they had been dyed with blood. Chapter 933. The young men in blood could not help but laugh wildly in Jianqin's sea of consciousness when he heard what Jianqin had said. His blood-red eyes were cold, filled with brutality and killing intent. The Emperor is not the weak Eight Wastelands. The souls of the Eight Wastelands have been devoured by the Emperor long ago. Other than the Eight Wastelands, the soul of another person called Gulu has also been devoured by the Emperor. Today, you will be the 3rd person to be devoured by the Emperor. Once the Emperor devours you, he will possess your body. How great of an honor would that be for you? Kid, don't resist. All resistance is futile before the Emperor. Just fuse with the Emperor at ease, sneered the young men in blood. I really never thought that the Blood Demon Emperor would still be alive after being dead for several tens of thousands of years, and he's even devoured the souls of 2 other emperors. Genshin's face sank. Now he completely understood the identity of the young men in blood. He was the Blood Demon Emperor who had fought against the Hall Masters of the Poseidon Hall several tens of thousands of years ago, heavily injuring the Hall Masters of the Poseidon Hall and the Hall Master of Dragon God Temple, as well as killing the Hall Master of the Heaven's Spirit Hall. Blood Demon Emperor, you were indeed extremely powerful when you were alive, but you're only left with your soul now. In your current state, you probably can't even deal with a few 16-star experts, which is why you can only possess our bodies. However, do you really think you can successfully possess me and devour my soul? Genshin coldly replied. At the same time, his sea of consciousness suddenly shook. A soul that far surpassed the 9th heavenly layer of Saint Ruler radiated. This was the power of Genshin's soul. Your soul is indeed very powerful, but it's not enough to threaten the Emperor. Come, don't resist. Fuse with me, the great Blood Demon Emperor. Once we fuse, you'll be the Blood Demon Emperor. Very soon, your name will spread across the entire sea realm, and you'll become the greatest expert of the sea race. You'll be respected and feared by countless people. Just think about it, just how great of an honor this is. As long as you fuse with me, you'll be able to enjoy this supreme honor. As the Blood Demon Emperor spoke, a strand of faint, baleful force filled Genshin's sea of consciousness in an attempt to affect Genshin's mind and thoughts so that he could achieve his goal. The Blood Demon Emperor had already noticed that Genshin was extraordinary. Not only had Genshin's soul far surpassed the 9th heavenly layer of Saint Ruler, but he could also sense 2 extremely powerful forces in his sea of consciousness. He felt threatened from the 2 forces, which was why he had wasted so much time talking to Genshin. Genshin's sea of consciousness began to gently tremble. Genshin was unable to resist the baleful force from the Blood Demon Emperor. He could only endure it. The baleful force from the Blood Demon Emperor had already affected Genshin's soul slightly. Blood Demon Emperor, do you think I'm as easy to trick as a 3-year-old? You're dreaming if you want to devour my soul and take over my body. I will never let you do as you wish. Genshin countered mercilessly. The Blood Demon Emperor was furious. Killing intent filled his eyes. He was no longer in the mood to waste his breath on Genshin. He growled, I'll give you one last chance. Do you want the Emperor to devour you? Or do you want to fuse with the Emperor? What's the difference between devouring and fusing? I won't be able to escape death in the end. But do you really think you have the ability to devour my soul? A disdainful sneer appeared on Genshin's face. He had already fused with the sword spirits, so devouring his soul would be equivalent to devouring the sword spirits. Although the sword spirits were still very weak, they were once the spirits of a sword after all. Even the destruction of the Azulite swords did not kill them. So how could a mere Blood Demon Emperor devour them? Genshin could also tell that the Blood Demon Emperor's soul was still very weak. It was not as powerful as he had imagined it to be. It could probably only deal with 9th heavenly layer Saint Rulers like Tisniak with ease. Since you won't cooperate, the Emperor will take over your body, even if he has to take the risk of being heavily injured. I'd like to see how you resist my baleful force. The Blood Demon Emperor suddenly vanished. He turned into a blood-red mist that constantly expanded in Genshin's sea of consciousness. Genshin's face immediately became filled with pain. His sea of consciousness seemed to experience an earthquake as it began to violently tremble. The Blood Demon Emperor's baleful force had evolved from baleful force. Not only did it possess the same characteristics as baleful force, but it was also far more powerful. The baleful force slowly devoured Genshin's soul. At this moment, a golden light suddenly appeared. It shone brightly and filled Genshin's entire sea of consciousness. A golden pagoda rapidly expanded in the depths of Genshin's sea of consciousness. It was only the size of a palm in the beginning, but in the blink of an eye, it had expanded to tens of thousands of meters tall. The golden pagoda was like a Poseidon. Its appearance immediately stabilized Genshin's shaking sea of consciousness. The blood demon emperor's baleful force was no longer able to harm Genshin. What is this? It can actually block my baleful force. The blood demon emperor's cry rang out in Genshin's sea of consciousness. His voice was filled with disbelief. The golden light enveloped Genshin's entire sea of consciousness, absorbing the damage from the baleful force in place of Genshin. Afterwards, the golden light rapidly retracted and actually forced the blood demon emperor's baleful force back into the sea of consciousness. In the end, it condensed back into the appearance of the young men in blood. They were in Genshin's sea of consciousness, and the saint artifact had already recognized Genshin as its master. As a result, the saint artifact was much more powerful there than it was outside. The blood demon emperor was unable to shake the saint artifact at all as a soul. What is this? It can actually block my baleful force, and how can it appear in your soul? The blood demon emperor cried out. Even though he had once been a knowledgeable emperor, he had never heard of something as strange as this. With a thought, a sword immediately appeared before Genshin before shooting toward the blood demon emperor's soul with lightning-like speed. The sword was condensed from the power of Genshin's soul. He was unable to use chaotic force in his sea of consciousness, and even the advantage of the chaotic body was completely lost. He could only use his soul to fight against the blood demon emperor. Your soul is not weak, but it's not enough to harm the emperor, the blood demon emperor sneered. The demon blood emperor sneered. At this moment, he finally realized that the saint artifact could only protect Genshin from harm and not attack. This made him feel much more relieved. The sword condensed from the power of Genshin's soul directly pierced through the blood demon emperor's body. It failed to harm the blood demon emperor at all. Haha, the emperor said that you can't harm me at all. The emperor's soul may not be as powerful as it was in his peak condition, but it's not something a mere 14th-star warrior like you can harm, the blood demon emperor sneered. I don't think that's the case, said Genshin before rapidly fading away. He vanished from the sea of consciousness very soon. Blood demon emperor, I wonder if I can harm you if I use my full strength. Genshin's voice rang out from all directions. Afterwards, the entire sea of consciousness began to churn violently. An even more terrifying soul condensed into a sword, shooting toward the blood demon emperor as a bolt of lightning. The blood demon emperor bellowed out. Immediately, a strand of slaughter chi separated from his soul to receive the incoming sword from Genshin. However, before the strand of slaughter chi could leave his body, it was forced back by the power of the saint artifact. He had been trapped by the saint artifact and had basically lost the ability to fight back. All he could do was watch as Genshin's sword shot toward him. The attack that Genshin had unleashed with the power of his soul directly pierced through the blood demon emperor's body. After taking on the attack, the blood demon emperor was no longer able to remain unscathed. His body immediately dimmed slightly. You can't kill the emperor. The blood demon emperor bellowed at the sky. His body rapidly shrank, condensing into a 3-inch tall figure in the end. His soul became even more condensed as he wildly rammed against the restraints of the saint artifact. He knew that if he could not break free from the saint artifact's restraints, he would not be able to harm Genshin at all. This was because his soul had been firmly trapped by the saint artifact's power. It was impossible for him to spread, let alone devour Genshin's soul. However, no matter how hard the blood demon emperor tried, he was unable to break free from the saint artifact's restraints. He could not even make the golden light waver. At this moment, another sword condensed and shot toward the blood demon emperor's shrunken soul with lightning-like speed. However, The Blood Demon Emperor's soul was extremely condensed now, so Genshin's attack failed to harm him. Unless you possess the strength of a 15-star expert, you won't be able to harm the Emperor. Brat, the Emperor has changed his mind now. The Emperor won't devour you anymore. So why don't you let the Emperor out? If we continue to remain in this stalemate, we won't be able to do anything to each other. The Blood Demon Emperor finally gave in. He had once been able to look down on everyone with his strength, but he was no longer as mighty as before. In his current state, any random 15-star expert could obliterate him. Blood Demon Emperor, if I've guessed correctly, your soul has become so powerful because you've absorbed the vital energies in the blood. If it weren't for the vital energies in the blood, you would still be in a slumber right now. You would have vanished before long. I'd like to see just how long you can last after absorbing the vital energies of the sea race and the vicious beasts. Genshin spoke extremely coldly as he constantly used his soul to attack the Blood Demon Emperor. The Blood Demon Emperor's face immediately sank. Clearly, Genshin had hit the nail on the head. Just as I thought. Blood Demon Emperor, since you want to harm me, I, Genshin, will definitely not leave you alone. Let me exhaust your power right now and make you vanish completely, said Genshin. Chapter 934. The Blood Demon Emperor's eyes were filled with determination. He said, "Humph, who am I, the Blood Demon Emperor? If you want the Emperor to vanish, then the Emperor will make you pay the price. If you want me to pay the price, then you'd better break through the restraints of the Saint Artifact first. Otherwise, you won't be able to harm me at all." Genshin's cold voice rang out. His soul was protected by the Saint Artifact, so only the Holy Emperor could break through it. He did not believe that the Blood Demon Emperor would possess such strength in his soul form. "Humph! I'll let the Emperor break through your so-called Saint Artifact's defenses right now." The Blood Demon Emperor's soul began to rapidly shrink. In the blink of an eye, it went from a 3-inch tall figure to a thumb-sized bead. The bead was completely blood-red and shone with a demonic red light. It actually seemed to be able to suppress the golden light from the Saint Artifact. The Emperor has sacrificed half of his soul to condense Amagami. Please help me break through this tower, Amagami. The Blood Demon Emperor's voice rang out from the blood-red bead. Suddenly, his soul rapidly weakened while the blood-red bead shone brightly. It actually broke through the restraints of the Saint Artifact's golden light and enveloped Genshin's sea of consciousness. Amagami, that's Amagami. Why has the Amagami of the Empyrean Demon Emperor appeared here? Suddenly, the sword spirits' voices rang out in Genshin's sea of consciousness. Their voices were filled with surprise. Soon after, 2 extremely powerful lights, one violet and one azure, rose up from the depths of Genshin's sea of consciousness. They rapidly expanded throughout Genshin's sea of consciousness. With the appearance of the azure and violet lights, the blood-red light from the Empyrean demon orb came to a halt. The 2 lights quickly invaded Genshin's sea of consciousness and actually surrounded the blood-red light from Amagami. Soon after, the 2 lights rapidly dimmed, causing Genshin's sea of consciousness to become blurry. It became chaotic where nothing could be seen. Everything was gray as far as the eye could see. Amagami, even the Empyrean Demon Emperor, doesn't have the courage to harm our master, let alone you. If you know what's good for you, piss off. Don't force me to attack you. The voices of the Zing sword spirits rang out in all directions. Soon after, the chaotic space in the surroundings suddenly transformed into a scene of outer space. In the scene, countless people were engaged in an intense battle in outer space. They fought until the ground collapsed and space was destroyed. Countless planets were destroyed from the shockwaves of their battle. Powerful corpses floated in space as countless droplets of golden blood covered the entire region. Every single droplet of blood possessed an unimaginable amount of energy, enough to easily kill any holy emperor. 2 huge swords flew through the crowd of people on the battlefield. Both swords were tens of thousands of meters long and shone with a dazzling violet and azure light. Wherever the two swords passed by, they would leave behind broken limbs. Countless people had died to the two swords. The two swords were so powerful that they could shake up the heavens and destroy the world. These scenes were all real. They were scenes of the battle that the sword spirits had experienced in the past. They had been projected through their abilities. Amagami began to tremble violently as if it was afraid. The red light that it emitted rapidly withdrew as well, completely hiding within the bead in the blink of an eye. Afterwards, it could not help but fall a little as if it was submitting. It did not dare to contend against the sword spirits. And no, none of this is real. None of this is real. Fake, fake. These scenes are all fake. The Blood Demon Emperor's terrified cries rang out from Amagami. His voice was filled with deep fear. These scenes were projected by the sword spirits through their abilities, projecting what had happened in the past. The Blood Demon Emperor could not help but become immersed in them, as if the scenes were extremely realistic. Not only could he clearly sense how terrifying those people were, but he could also clearly sense just how terrifying a casual strike from them was. Every single person in the scenes was far more powerful than the Holy Emperor. Even if the Blood Demon Emperor was in his peak condition, he would not be able to block a casual strike from them. Just a single droplet of their blood would be enough to obliterate his soul. The strength of the people in the scenes had far exceeded what the Blood Demon Emperor knew. It was beyond his comprehension. A deep sense of fear immediately filled the Blood Demon Emperor's mind. I don't believe it. I don't believe this is real. It's all fake. The Blood Demon Emperor's terrified cries constantly rang out from Amagami. He had once spent several thousand years of arduous cultivation to reach the level of the Holy Emperor, becoming one of the few experts in the sea realm that could be counted on one hand. Even the three divine halls feared him. What kind of glory was that? Yet now, when he discovered that the great strength he had spent several thousand years of arduous cultivation was so weak in the eyes of the people in the scenes, he immediately experienced an extremely great impact. He struggled to accept it. Half of the power of his soul has been depleted. Master, why don't you destroy his soul? The sword spirits' voices rang out. With that, Jianshin did not hesitate at all. He immediately condensed the power of his soul into a sword and shot it at Amagami mercilessly. Jianshin's sword accurately struck Amagami, causing Amagami to gently tremble. A chilling cry immediately rang out from within. It was the Blood Demon Emperor's voice. The Blood Demon Emperor's soul was now half as weak as before. It was no longer able to block Jianshin's attack. Amagami, take me away from here. The Blood Demon Emperor's voice was filled with panic. He could already feel death rapidly approaching him. However, Amagami hovered there without moving at all. It did not listen to the Blood Demon Emperor's orders at all. At this moment, Jianshin's second sword of the soul had already been condensed. It viciously struck the Sky Demon God. The Blood Demon Emperor's miserable cry rang out once again. Amagami did not protect him at all. His soul had become extremely weak. Blood Demon Emperor, I'll send you on your way right now. Let me, Jianshin, have a taste of killing an expert like the Holy Emperor. Jianshin's voice was cold and emotionless. The third sword of the soul rapidly condensed and whistled through the air, striking Amagami with lightning speed. Bang! With a gentle sound, the Blood Demon Emperor's soul completely collapsed. It was directly wiped out in Jianshin's sea of consciousness. At the same time, a few fragments of memories regarding the Blood Demon Emperor drifted out. As this was Jianshin's sea of consciousness, Jianshin could clearly understand some of the Blood Demon Emperor's past from the fragments of memories. In the past, the Blood Demon Emperor was a cultivator with some talent in the sea realm. He was fortunate enough to be chosen by Amagami, who fused with his soul and taught him cultivation methods. From then on, his life underwent an overwhelming change. the Blood Demon Emperor worked hard to cultivate the cultivation method he had obtained from Amagami. His strength increased extremely rapidly, becoming a saint ruler in just over 200 years, a holy emperor in 800 years, and a holy emperor in 2,300 years. He was a legendary figure in the sea realm. Jianqin also learned from the Blood Demon Emperor's memories that he had ventured out when he had just become a holy emperor. He had founded one of the 3 great assassin organizations on the continent, the Bloodsword Sect, and taught them a cultivation method he had modified. Afterwards, the Blood Demon Emperor became enemies with the 3 Halls. He fought against the 3 emperors in outer space and passed away in the end. However, his soul managed to escape under Amagami's protection, hiding in the Divine Hall to recuperate. The Divine Hall of the 8 Wastelands had originally been created by the Blood Demon Emperor through his abilities. It was originally called the Blood Demon Divine Hall. After the Blood Demon Emperor's soul escaped, he fell into a deep slumber due to his weakness. When he woke up, he discovered that he was unable to leave the Divine Hall with the current power of his soul. Helpless, he could only hide in the Divine Hall and wait for his death to come. His soul would disperse by itself. Under the protection of the Empyrean demon Orb, his soul slumbered for 10,000 years without dispersing. 10,000 years later, his Divine Hall was discovered by a 16th star expert who took it for himself. In order to prevent his existence from being discovered, the Blood Demon Emperor hid himself deep within the Divine Hall. Many years later, the 16th star expert who discovered the Divine Hall successfully became an emperor. He changed the name of the Divine Hall to the Ancient Music Divine Hall, becoming the renowned Emperor Ancient Music in the Sea Realm. Emperor Ancient Music passed away in the Ancient Music Divine Hall after 10,000 years. However, in that crucial moment, the Blood Demon Emperor suddenly appeared from within Amagami. While the Emperor was weak, he managed to devour his soul without being able to defend himself, prolonging his own death. Another 10,000 years later, the Ancient Music Divine Hall was discovered by the 8 Wastelands. The 8 Wastelands also took it for himself, changing the name of the Divine Hall to the 8 Wastelands Divine Hall. The Emperor of the 8 Wastelands never discovered the existence of the Blood Demon Emperor during the several thousand years he occupied the Divine Hall. In the end, the Emperor of the 8 Wastelands reached the end of his life. He could not bear to see his legacy end just like that, so he began to set up things in the Divine Hall in the final years of his life. He wanted to leave behind his legacy. When the Emperor of the 8 Wastelands reached the end of his life, he passed away on the 9th floor of the Divine Hall. His vitality was severed, and his soul rapidly dispersed. He was extremely weak. However, the Emperor of the 8 Wastelands had never thought that he would be suddenly attacked by the Blood Demon Emperor's soul in the final moments. The Blood Demon Emperor wanted to devour the Emperor's soul. The Emperor of the 8 Wastelands was much stronger than Emperor Ancient Music. In the final moments, he used all of his strength to fight the Blood Demon Emperor with his soul, turning the 9th floor of the Divine Hall into a mess. However, he was still devoured by the Blood Demon Emperor in the end. In this battle, the Blood Demon Emperor's soul was injured. He devoured the Emperor of the 8 Wastelands' soul to recover. Then he used the Emperor of the 8 Wastelands' handiwork to make some changes to his arrangements in the Divine Hall of the 8 Wastelands. As a result, the Divine Hall of the 8 Wastelands that the Emperor of the 8 Wastelands used to choose his legacy became a scheme for the Blood Demon Emperor to possess him. So that's how it is. I never thought that the Divine Hall of the 8 Wastelands would hide so many stories. The Divine Hall was originally created by the Blood Demon Emperor, but changed its name because it changed 2 masters later on. The Blood Demon Emperor actually devoured the souls of Emperor Ancient Music and the 8 Wastelands. I never thought that the Blood Sword sect of the Tianyuan continent was actually created by the Blood Demon Emperor several tens of thousand years ago. Jianqin became extremely unsettled after learning all of this. His heart churned. Chapter 935. The Blood Demon Emperor's soul really is powerful. Now that his soul is dissipating in my sea of consciousness, I should be able to absorb it and strengthen my soul, Jianqin thought. Without any hesitation, Jianqin immediately dismissed his thoughts and began to devour the blood demon emperor's soul. Jianqin was currently seated on the 9th floor. His eyes were closed, so no one knew what was going on. Newbies paced back and forth anxiously beside Jianqin. Although he already knew that the blood demon emperor's soul had entered Jianqin's head, there was nothing he could do about the current situation. All he could do was worry. Jianqin, I really can't help you right now. You have to be fine. You have to make it through. Newbies prayed. He had been lured out of the Cross Mountains by Jianqin using the corpses of his kind in exchange for 10 years of time. However, after spending so many years together, Newbies and Jianqin's relationship had changed drastically. Their relationship was no longer one of mutual benefit. Instead, they were best friends. As a result, Newbies was extremely worried about Jianqin's current situation. At this moment, the pale-faced Tesnik slowly stood up from the ground. When the blood demon emperor's primordial spirit entered his brain, it had already devoured a small portion of his primordial spirit. Tesnik's primordial spirit was severely injured, and he had only just recovered. Tesnik stared at Jianqin coldly as undisguised killing intent filled his eyes. He coldly said, "Emperor of the 8 Wastelands, I never thought that you would still be alive. I never thought that the divine hall of the 8 Wastelands would actually be part of your scheme. Your goal was to lure us in from outside so you could choose a talented body to possess." Tesnik still did not know about the blood demon emperor. He still treated the blood demon emperor, who wanted to devour his soul, as the emperor of the 8 Wastelands. Emperor of the 8 Wastelands, you must have devoured the soul of the ruler of the Turtle Clan. If you want to completely control the ruler's body, you'll need some time. This is the perfect time to kill you. Tesnik's face sank as he drew his blades. Newbies immediately stood in front of Jianqin when he saw how Tesnik wanted to attack Jianqin. He coldly said, "With the great Newbies here, don't even think about harming Jianqin. Piss off. You're not my opponent. If I want to kill you, it'll be as easy as crushing an ant." Tesnik's eyes were filled with disdain. He did not treat Newbies with any importance at all. How could the prideful Newbies endure Tesnik's provocation? A tremendous presence immediately radiated from his body as his eyes became extremely sharp at that moment. He did not hide his killing intent at all. "Tesnik, anyone who dares to speak to the great Newbies like that will never have a good ending. In the eyes of the great Newbies, killing you is a piece of cake. If it were not for the great energy that someone left in your body, the great Newbies really would not treat you with any importance at all," Newbies said with a heavy voice. "If it were any other time and place, I would definitely have a true battle with you and see just how great your abilities are. Unfortunately, I can't do that now. I need to eliminate the ruler of the Turtle Clan, or I might not be able to leave once the Emperor of the 8 Wastelands completely takes control of his body. Newbies, I originally planned on using this Emperor's power to accept the legacy of the 8 Wastelands, but I have to use it now. Let me use this sliver of Emperor's power to completely end the lives of you and the ruler of the Turtle Clan." An extremely terrifying power radiated from Tesnik's body. A strand of extremely pure energy slowly drifted out from his body before condensing at the tip of his finger in the end. This was Emperor's power. It was the power that a holy emperor had left in his body, and it was also Tesnik's greatest trump card. The sliver of Emperor's power was enough to heavily injure a 9th heavenly layer, holy emperor. Newbies' face became ugly. He could sense the power of the Emperor's power. If he faced it, he would definitely die. Tesnik stared at the Emperor's power at the tip of his finger and said, "To be able to die to this sliver of Emperor's power is a supreme honor for you. Newbies, Emperor of the 8 Wastelands, allow me, Tesnik, to completely end your lives right now." Killing intent exploded in Tesnik's eyes as he was about to unleash the Emperor's power at the tip of his finger. However, at this moment, a huge stone slab fell from the ceiling and landed on the ground with a heavy thud. This sudden change caused Tesniak's emperor's might to involuntarily slow down, and he subconsciously looked up. On the ceiling of the palace, there was a big hole covered by a stone slab. A gentle light came out of the hole, but it was impossible to see what was inside. This is the core of the 8 Wastelands Divine Hall. It's the core that controls the 8 Wastelands Divine Hall. Tesniak could not help but cry out in surprise. His face was filled with joy, and without any hesitation, he withdrew the Emperor's force from his fingertip and shot it into the glowing green hole. As soon as Tiznik disappeared into the hole, the green light from the hole rapidly vanished as well. When the green light completely dissipated, the hole had disappeared, and the ceiling of the 9th floor of the palace returned to its original undamaged state. Only a huge stone door was left lying on the ground. I never thought that would actually be the core that controls the 8 Wastelands Divine Hall. Newbie stared at the ceiling regretfully as his eyes shone with scorching light. It was a pity that Tiznik possessed the Emperor's power. It was powerful enough to destroy the Divine Hall, so he did not dare to compete with him. With Tiznik's disappearance, the 9th floor returned to peace. Only Jianqin and Newbies remained. Jianqin was still absorbing the remaining power of the Blood Demon Emperor's soul as hard as he could right now. All of his attention was focused on his consciousness, so he had no idea what was happening in the outside world. He also had no idea that Tiznik had entered the core of the Divine Hall and would be able to control the Divine Hall soon. He would be able to use the Divine Hall's power as he wished. Jianqin could not sense the flow of time in his sea of consciousness. The only thing he could sense was that his soul was rapidly strengthening while the remaining power of the Blood Demon Emperor's soul was rapidly weakening. Devouring a person's soul would be an extremely strange matter on the Tianyuan continent because this was not the case in this world. It was basically impossible for something like this to happen in this world. The reason why the Blood Demon Emperor could devour the souls of Gu Lu and the 8 Wastelands was because he had Amagami's assistance. The reason why Jianqin could devour the Blood Demon Emperor's soul was because the Blood Demon Emperor's soul had entered Jianqin's sea of consciousness of its own accord. With a sliver of the Blood Demon Emperor's soul, the collapsed soul should have vanished from the world. But due to the difference in location and environment, it remained in Jianqin's sea of consciousness. As a result, Jianqin was able to successfully absorb the Blood Demon Emperor's soul. Jianqin definitely would not have been able to do something like this in the outside world. The Blood Demon Emperor's soul contained a few fragments of memories and some comprehension of the mysteries of the world. When Jianqin absorbed the Blood Demon Emperor's soul, he possessed the fragments of memories and mysteries of the world as well, allowing his comprehension of the mysteries to skyrocket. Even though the mysteries of the world were only fragments and not complete, they still came from the Blood Demon Emperor. Jianqin benefited greatly from just a few fragments. His comprehension of the mysteries of the world that had remained at the first heavenly layer of Saint Ruler had actually skyrocketed to the 7th heavenly layer in such a short amount of time, catching up to the 2nd layer of the chaotic body. Time passed silently. After who knew how long, Jianqin finally absorbed all of the Blood Demon Emperor's soul, allowing Jianqin's soul to rapidly grow as well. The only thing he felt regretful about was that he did not obtain any memories of Gu Lu or the 8 Wastelands from the Blood Demon Emperor's soul. It seemed like the Blood Demon Emperor did not obtain any memories of Gu Lu and the 8 Wastelands when he devoured them. Jianqin's sea of consciousness had calmed down long ago. Only the demonic red Amagami hovered there. Jianqin focused his attention on the Amagami. The Amagami clearly came from the same era as the sword spirits. Jianqin was filled with curiosity about the details of the bead. Zing, Qing Suo, just what is this Amagami? Jianqin asked the sword spirits. Right now, he could only obtain some information about the bead from the sword spirits. This was because even the Blood Demon Emperor did not know the true origin of the bead. He only knew that the bead was called amigami and that it was a very special and mystical item. The sword spirits seemed to hesitate for a while in response to Genshin's question before slowly answering. Master, the amigami is the famous treasure of the celestial demon emperor. It was refined using the essence blood of the celestial demon emperor. It is a powerful demonic artifact. Who is the celestial demon emperor? Is he very powerful? Why did his treasure end up here? Genshin asked. The celestial demon emperor was the first demon emperor of the demon world. Not only was she the #1 demoness of the demon world, she was also extremely powerful. She had been at the peak of the demon emperor realm for many years. She was only a step away from becoming a demon emperor. The celestial demon emperor created the celestial demon emperor's art of the celestial demon emperor was even more powerful. At that time, it was considered a high-level cultivation method in the demon world. The god-devouring force that was cultivated from the celestial demon emperor's art of the celestial demon emperor was so terrifying that anyone who heard of it would die upon contact. The soul-devouring force is equivalent to the massacre force and baleful een force that Master understands. These two forces are both evolved from the soul-devouring force. However, compared to the soul-devouring force, they are far, far too weak. Chapter 936. The amigami is a powerful demonic artifact, but it's extremely special. It's completely different from regular artifacts. Once it accepts a master, it'll turn into nothingness and fuse with your soul, just like the Blood Demon Emperor. However, the Blood Demon Emperor has fused with the amigami, so he can only obtain the Empyrean Demon Saint's cultivation method from the amigami. He can't use the demonic artifact, or he would never have ended up like this, Zing explained to Genshin. Looks like the amigami is much more powerful than a saint artifact, Genshin murmured. The most powerful artifact he possessed right now was a saint artifact, so he could not help but compare the amigami to a saint artifact. Master, the true power of the amigami is beyond your imagination. If you compare a saint artifact to a saint artifact, it's impossible to compare them. In the past, amigami only needed a strand of soul-devouring force to turn a saint artifact to nothingness. Qing Sua's voice rang out in Genshin's head. Genshin shivered inside when he heard that. He was shocked by amigami's strength. Saint artifacts were tough enough to be destroyed by anyone below the level of a holy emperor. Yet amigami only needed a strand of soul-devouring force to turn a saint artifact to nothingness. In other words, a strand of amigami's soul-devouring force could easily kill a holy emperor. It's just a pity that amigami is extremely weak right now. She must have been heavily injured in that battle. Zing's voice rang out again. Her voice was filled with pity. At this moment, amigami suddenly shone with a weak red light. It gently trembled in Genshin's sea of consciousness. At the same time, Genshin felt like his mind was forming a connection with amigami. This amigami actually wants to accept a master. Humph, aren't you overestimating yourself? Zing's voice rang out. Her voice was filled with undisguised anger and deep disdain. With a flash of violet light, she immediately cut off the process between amigami and Genshin. Amigami's red light flickered rapidly, flickering as if she had been wronged. She was like a little girl who had been bullied and was crying by herself. Amigami wants to accept me as her master? Doesn't that mean I can obtain the Empyrean Demon Saint's cultivation method? Genshin asked curiously. Master, the Empyrean Demon Saint's Empyrean Demon Arts is indeed a high-level cultivation method, but it's nowhere close to chaotic force because the chaotic body is a supreme cultivation method that surpasses the apex. There's no need for you to practice the Empyrean Demon Arts because it will only affect your future accomplishments, explained Zing. However, there was one thing that he did not tell Genshin, which was that no one had ever cultivated the chaotic body to the peak since ancient times. Master, Zing is right. Even if you reach the peak of the Empyrean Demon Arts, you'll only be able to reach the same level as the Empyrean Demon Saint back then. It'll be very difficult for you to break through to Demon Emperor. However, once you reach the peak of the chaotic body, you'll be able to reach the level of Grand Exalts. You'll be able to crush an expert like the Empyrean Demon Saint to death with a single finger. Ching Sua's pleasant voice rang out. It was as pleasant as music. Jianqin came to a realization. Although the Empyrean Demon Arts was a high-level cultivation method, it was clearly nowhere close to the chaotic body he currently practiced. The Empyrean Demon Arts was nowhere close to the chaotic body. If he practiced the Empyrean Demon Arts, it was extremely likely for his future accomplishments to be limited, preventing him from standing at the very apex. If that's the case, I don't need to practice the Empyrean Demon Arts. I'll focus on the chaotic body. Jianqin immediately gave up on the idea of practicing the Empyrean Demon Arts. Amagami, this is not a place for you to stay. You should leave. Afterwards, Ziying and Ching Sua chased Amagami away, chasing Amagami out of Jianqin's sea of consciousness. Amagami seemed to have been greatly wronged. It constantly flickered with red light as if it was crying silently. It had been forced out of Jianqin's sea of consciousness by the sword spirits. Amagami was a powerful treasure, but it was extremely weak, just like the sword spirits right now. Only people who practiced the Empyrean Demon Arts could use it, so it was completely useless to Jianqin, who did not plan on practicing the Empyrean Demon Arts. Jianqin's consciousness returned to his body. When he slowly opened his eyes, he immediately saw a demonic red orb. The bead was floating in the air in front of him. Are you Jianqin, or the Emperor of the 8 Wastelands? A voice immediately rang out from nearby. Newbie stood 20 meters away vigilantly, staring sharply at Jianqin. His face was filled with worry and anxiety. Right now, newbies could not tell whether Jianqin had been possessed by the Emperor of the 8 Wastelands. Seeing Newbie's nervous appearance, Jianqin could not help but smile. Newbies, I am still me. Not only did the Blood Demon Emperor fail to possess my body, his soul was even destroyed in the end. Jianqin, is it really you? Newbies immediately became excited. He had known Jianqin for a long time now, so they were extremely familiar with each other. He could confirm Jianqin's identity just from Jianqin's expression and tone. However, newbies immediately became stunned. What did you say? The soul that tried to possess you is the Blood Demon Emperor? Isn't he the Emperor of the 8 Wastelands? Jianqin gently shook his head and told newbies everything he knew about the Blood Demon Emperor. When newbies learnt that ancient music and the Emperor of the 8 Wastelands had both been devoured by the Blood Demon Emperor, he could not help but sigh in disbelief. Suddenly, Jianqin seemed to think of something. He looked around. Where's this Nike? Why don't I see him? Newbie straightened his face and immediately became stern. He said, Jianqin, this Nike has already entered the core of the Divine Hall. He's currently controlling the Divine Hall. I think he'll become the master of the Divine Hall before long. We need to stop him. Jianqin's face changed when he heard that. He suddenly raised his head to look at the ceiling, and his face immediately sank. He had learnt some information about the Divine Hall from the Blood Demon Emperor's memories. The most important piece of information was the location of the core of the Divine Hall, and it just happened to be on the ceiling. The core of the Divine Hall has already been closed, Jianqin said sternly. Jianqin, have you learned how to open the door to the core from the Blood Demon Emperor's memories? Newbies asked hopefully. He had already learnt from Jianqin that there was no exit to the Divine Hall of the 8 Wastelands. The only way out was to take control of the Divine Hall and use its power to send people out. Jianqin shook his head. He only knew where the core of the Divine Hall was. He did not know how to open the door to the core. Then we'll just have to open the door. Battle intent surged in Newbies' eyes. A terrifying presence radiated from his body. He had completely unleashed the might of a magical beast with half a foot in the 8th class. Let's try our best. Determination flooded Jianqin's eyes as well. They had no other choice now that things had developed like this. Although he had devoured a portion of the Blood Demon Emperor's soul, he had not taken control of the Divine Hall. If he wanted to take control of the Divine Hall, he had to take control of the core of the Divine Hall. There were no other shortcuts apart from that. The core of the Divine Hall was the key to taking control of the Divine Hall. Jianqin wielded the king weapon as his chaotic force surged into it. The king weapon shone with a black light as the destructive presence it gave off was enough to make people shiver in fright. Although the current primal chaos force was not the true primal chaos force, it was not weak at all. A sharp roar rang out from beside him. Newbies had already vanished, replaced by a 30-meter-long python. It was majestic, noble, and prideful. Newbies had already reverted to his original form. He immediately began to charge up his most powerful secret technique. Dazzling gold and silver light shone around him as he opened his mouth and spat out a large ball of condensed venom. It shot toward the ceiling of the hall with lightning-like speed. The venom of golden-striped silver snakes was unrivaled in the world. It was one of the top 3 venomous snakes on the Tianyuan continent. The venom he had just spat out was from a secret technique, so its toxicity had reached a shocking level. Newbie's venom seemed to be able to corrode everything. When the venom made contact with the ceiling that the Holy Emperor had struggled to break through immediately began to show signs of melting. It began to melt at a visible rate, but only the outermost layer was melted before it was stopped by the power of the Divine Hall. It was unable to advance any further. After the venom, he spat out another 2 beams of light that were as thick as an arm. They struck the ceiling viciously and produced a great boom. The strike was actually no weaker than the full-powered strike of the Holy Emperor at the 3rd heavenly layer. At the same time, Jianqin launched a full-powered strike as well. He leapt into the air and stabbed the same spot that Newbies had attacked with the Saint armament. Boom! With a great boom, Jianqin was knocked back by the violent shockwaves of energy, landing on the ground once again. Aside from a layer of skin that had been melted away by Newbie's venom, the door to the center of the hall was completely unscathed. Not a single mark was left behind. The defense of the door to the center of the hall is on par with the Divine Hall. We can't break through it with our current strength, Jianqin said with a heavy voice. His complexion was extremely ugly. Once Tesnik gained control of the Divine Hall, the 2 of them would no longer have any bargaining chips to contend with him. They could only hide in the Saint artifact. This was because Jianqin had learnt from the Blood Demon Emperor's memories that gaining control of the Divine Hall meant gaining control of the power within the Divine Hall. Although the power within the Divine Hall could not be used to attack external enemies, it could be used as it pleased within the Divine Hall. Tesnik could use the power of the Divine Hall to deal with them. However, the power of the Divine Hall was on the same level as the power of emperors. Chapter 937. Perhaps we still have a method to get through the gate, Jianqin said with a straight face. Newbies rejoiced when he heard that. He stared at Jianqin in interest and asked, Jianqin, what other methods do you have? Find the Emperor armament and use its power to get through the gate, Jianqin said. The joy on Newbie's face rapidly vanished. He looked at Jianqin with a troubled expression and said, It's not like you don't know the power of the Emperor armament. We can't control it with our current strength, and even if we can control it, can we really break through the door of the hub with the power of the Emperor armament? Don't forget that the Emperor armament is still trapped in the Divine Hall. It doesn't matter whether the Emperor armament can get through the gate or not. We still have to try because I can't think of any other methods. I just hope that the defenses of the gate aren't too powerful right now, said Jianqin. However, we need to make a breakthrough in our strength before we go for the Emperor armament. Once my chaotic body reaches the 3rd layer, I'll be able to stop being injured by the Emperor armament and control it with ease, Jianqin said in thought. All right then. I've reached the peak of Class 7 a long time ago. I'm half a step away from the 8 wastelands. If it weren't for the fact that we had to consider the limitations of strength in the Divine Hall back then, I would have broken through long ago. Once we break through, we really might be able to get through the gate with the help of the Emperor armament, Newbies said. Afterward, Jianchen and Newbies immediately entered the artifact space to cultivate. They planned on breaking through to the level of Holy Emperor in a single stroke. The defenses of the Saint artifact were extremely powerful. Even if Tisnek controlled the Divine Hall and attacked the Saint artifact with the power of the Divine Hall, he would not be able to break through the artifact in a short amount of time. As a result, the Saint artifact had become the only thing that supported Jianchen and Newbies. Jianchen sat in the center of an extremely quiet hall within the artifact space. Mountains of high-class monster cores and a large number of supreme-quality crystal coins were piled up around him, as well as a few fist-sized divine tier crystals. These items were what Jianchen relied on to break through to the third layer of the chaotic body. They would provide Jianchen with tremendous amounts of energy. As long as he had enough time, Jianchen would be able to successfully reach the third layer of the chaotic body. The first layer of the chaotic body allows me to possess the battle prowess of a third heavenly layer saint ruler, while the second layer allows me to possess the battle prowess of a seventh heavenly layer saint ruler. With a ruler armament, I can unleash the strength of a ninth heavenly layer saint ruler, while the saint armament allows me to possess the strength of a third heavenly layer holy emperor. Once I break through to the third layer, I should be able to surpass the 8th and 9th heavenly layer saint rulers in a single stroke and reach the level of a holy emperor. I just wonder how much strength I can unleash once I reach the level of a holy emperor with the saint armament, Jianchen murmured to himself. He was filled with anticipation. And there's the emperor armament. The emperor armament already possesses such terrifying power when no one is controlling it. I wonder how much strength I can unleash once I reach the third layer of the chaotic body and use the Emperor armament. Will I be able to fend off Hall elders? The golden silk armor woven from the silk of the primordial god silkworm is still in the hands of a divine general of the serpent god Hall. Although I don't know how to increase the defense of the silk, it's a rare treasure born from the world and is related to the crisis of the world. Once I'm strong enough, I'll definitely head to the Serpent God Hall personally and take the golden silk armor back. Jianchen felt a sense of urgency. He knew that he would be able to take back the golden silk armor soon. Once he broke through to the third layer of the chaotic body and grasped the Emperor armament, he would have enough strength to deal with the 4 divine generals of the Serpent God Hall. Cultivate, cultivate. I have to cultivate as soon as possible. This time, I have to break through to the third layer of the chaotic body as soon as possible, or I won't be able to leave this divine hall, let alone take back the golden silk armor. Jianchen quickly dismissed his thoughts and focused all of his attention on cultivation. The sword spirits appeared above Jianchen's head. They assisted Jianchen in refining the monster cores, crystal coins, and god-tier crystals in the surroundings. A faint smell of blood radiated from the high-class monster cores piled up in the surroundings. Jianchen had obtained these monster cores from the vicious beasts in the Divine Hall recently. The energy within the monster cores was extremely active at every moment, so refining them was much easier. Due to the lack of time, Jianchen only used fresh monster cores with active energy this time. He did not use the ancient monster cores from the artifact space that had completely solidified their energy. Although the monster cores were all high class, they had lost a lot of energy and had solidified, so refining them took a lot of time and effort. They were not suitable for him to use right now. As Jianchen refined the monster cores, Newbies did not sit around either. He was currently cultivating in a quiet hall. Unlike Jianchen, Newbies cultivated by devouring the essence of the old snake. The process was much easier and faster than Jianchen's. At this moment, there was an extremely narrow room in the center of the Divine Hall. The room was empty without any decorations. The only thing in the room was a Divine Hall that hovered a meter in the air at the center of the room. Although the Divine Hall gave off a majestic presence, it was extremely small. It was less than a meter in both length and width. If someone familiar with the 8 Wastelands Divine Hall were to come here, they would definitely discover that this small divine hall was the 8 Wastelands Divine Hall that had shrunk countless times. At this moment, Tesnik was sitting cross-legged in front of the mini-shrine. His energy was continuously pouring into the mini-shrine in front of him. Emperor of the 8 Wastelands, I really never thought that you would still be alive. The legacy of the 8 Wastelands Divine Hall was probably a scam from you. You've actually tricked all of us. But so what? I have the power of an emperor within me, let alone a soul like you. Even if you successfully possess the body of the ruler of the Turtle Clan, you'll still be extremely weak. I'd like to see how you block my attacks. I may not have obtained your legacy, but no one can stop me from controlling the Divine Hall. Emperor of the 8 Wastelands, once I completely control the Divine Hall, I might not even need to waste my power. Just the power of the Divine Hall will be enough to make you completely disperse. Tisnik's eyes flashed with a sharp light. Although the news of Octaterra Emperor's survival had a strong impact on his heart, he wasn't afraid because he already had a bargaining chip to deal with Octaterra Emperor. Emperor of the 8 Wastelands, you'll be dead in 5 years at most. It's just a pity for the ruler of the Turtle Clan. The mighty ruler of a clan has actually suffered such a miserable fate. In the blink of an eye, Jianqin had already spent a year in the Divine Hall of the 8 Wastelands. At this moment, the flame city that the flame mercenaries had constructed out of tungsten alloy on the distant Tianyuan continent had officially been completed. The majestic city wall was pitch black. From afar, it looked like a dragon crawling on the ground, exuding a vast and majestic aura. It made everyone feel an invisible pressure from the depths of their hearts. It was as if they were walking beside a peerless, ferocious beast when they passed by the city wall. The walls were 100 meters tall and several dozen kilometers long. Many magic crystal cannons had been set up on the walls, and several armored soldiers stood beside each cannon. They were all stern and cold. Today was the 3rd day since the completion of Flame City. At the same time, it was the busiest day since the city had been built. This was because the Vice City Lord of Flame City had invited all the people from the large clans and organizations within a radius of 100,000 kilometers to attend the ribbon-cutting ceremony. This day was an extremely special and important day for Flame City. Not only had the king of the kingdom of Jessen hurried over from afar, but even the Changyang ancestor and Changbo, who had founded Changyang Prefecture, had come as well. It could be said that Changyang Zhu Yunkong's life had been saved by Jianqin. If it were not for Jianqin's trip to the Sea of Illusory Stars to obtain the dragon's saliva grass, he probably would not have been able to leave 3 Saint Island even if he died, much less return to the Tianyuan continent to reunite with his family. As a result, Changyang Zhu Yunkong cared about his talented great-grandson to the extreme. The Flame Mercenaries had been personally founded by his great-grandson, so Changyang Zhu Yunkong obviously placed great importance on his great-grandson's business. Apart from that, even Ming Dong, De Gufeng, Tai Ta, Little Fatty, Wang Yifeng, and the others all emerged from seclusion to participate in the ribbon-cutting ceremony of Flame City. As the core members of the Flame Mercenaries, there was no way they would not participate in such an important event like the official opening of Flame City. After all these years of seclusion, the strength of Ming Dong and the others had increased drastically. Although they had not become saint rulers, all of them had become Heaven Saint Masters aside from Wang Yifeng. The person who improved the fastest among them was not the talented Ming Dong or Little Fatty, but the honest Tai Ta. Tai Ta's rate of improvement in the past few years could truly be described as godlike. It was so fast that it left people tongue-tied. He had actually caught up with them, completely surpassing Ming Dong and the others. He had reached the peak of Heaven Saint Master and was only a step away from becoming a saint ruler. Although Tai Ta's rate of improvement was extremely fast, his changes were extremely great as well. In the past, he was burly and tanned like charcoal, but now there was no longer any black skin on him. Instead, there was a sliver of gold. Under the sunlight, it shone with an unbelievable metallic luster. Taita had become even taller and bullier other than his skin. He was now 4 meters tall. Coupled with his burly body, he seemed like a small mountain as he stood there. In particular, under his honest appearance, there would often be a sense of awe and dignity. Since Flame City was the first city on the Tianyuan continent to be completely forged from precious tungsten alloy, its name had spread across the entire continent a few years ago. As a result, the ribbon-cutting ceremony in Flame City was bustling beyond everyone's imagination. Apart from the people who had been invited to the ribbon-cutting ceremony, there were also many representatives from large factions and clans who had come from hundreds of thousands of kilometers away, or even millions of kilometers away. An imperial protector of the Qin Huang Kingdom had personally come with the third prince, Qin Ji. There was also a great elder of the Tianqin clan who had come with Qin Shao, a travel-worn person. Apart from them, even some hermit clans and ancient clans that were rarely known to the public had come to congratulate him with gifts. Even the Grand Elder of the Radiant Saint Master Union had personally come with 3 saint rulers to congratulate them. This time, basically a third of all the organizations on the continent had gathered in the tiny city of Flame City. It was so bustling that it could be described as unprecedented. P.S. 17K has an event right now. Read 5 free chapters, and you can receive 1 RMB. You can also buy books for a month. It costs 30 RMB a month. You can read all of 17K's works for 1 RMB a day. We hope that you who like Genshin and read books on Baidu, Tieba, and various other pirated websites can register an account with 17K. You will receive K coins for every free chapter you read. We support Sword God and Xiaoyao. 17K's original subscriptions had never been high. Once its popularity increased, the number of subscriptions would increase as well. Xiaoyao knew that there were quite a lot of readers on Tieba, but he would only visit it once in a while. We hope that the readers who read Sword God on Tieba can register an account with 17K. If they have any questions, they can post them in the comments section. Xiaoyao would answer everyone's questions from 8:00 in the morning to midnight every day. Chapter 938. Under the lead of the Vice City Lord, the upper echelon of the Flame Mercenaries personally received the guests from various places within the city. The happiest and most excited person out of all the people who had come to attend the ribbon-cutting ceremony had to be the king of the Kingdom of Jessen. The king was unable to contain his excitement as he stared at the majestic walls of Flame City and the many peak organizations he had never heard of before. The smile on his face never faded. This was because the first Vice City Lord of Raging Flame City, the most expensive city in the history of the Tianyuan continent, was his daughter Yu. Everyone in Raging Flame City agreed that Yu would be the Vice City Lord of Raging Flame City. Not a single person dared to object. Flame City only existed because of Genshin, and Yu was Genshin's fiancée. She was the person closest to Genshin. At the same time, Yu was outstanding in management and excelled in all aspects. She was extremely suitable for the position of Vice City Lord. It could be said that there was no one else in the large mercenary group who was suitable for the position aside from Yu. The uniqueness of Flame City and its value meant that the city could not fall into the hands of outsiders no matter what. Although the captain of the Flame Mercenaries, Genshin, had been implicated by the matter of the winged tiger god and no one knew where he was right now, it did not diminish the glory of Flame City. This was because it was the only city wall on the Tianyuan continent that was completely forged from tungsten alloy. Its existence was comparable to the 7 capital cities that had stood for countless years. The ancient clan, the Tianmu clan, has come to visit. The ancient clan, the Morgan clan, has come to visit. More and more people from the various organizations gathered in the city as the loud and clear voice of the attendant rang out. Changyang Zhu Yinkong and Bai Hai currently sat together in the huge imperial palace in the center of the city as they chatted over wine. Their faces were filled with smiles as they glanced at the resplendent hall from time to time. Their faces were filled with joy. I really never thought that my great-grandson would be so bold. He actually built such a large city out of tungsten alloy. It really is unbelievable. Chanyang Zhu Yunkong sighed emotionally. He was in an extremely good mood. Bai Hai also smiled happily when he heard that. He said, Jianqin is indeed extremely capable. In particular, his talent for cultivation is unprecedented. He actually managed to become a saint ruler in just over 20 years. His future accomplishments will be unimaginable. Bai Hai seemed to think of something when he reached there. He gently sighed and said, It's just a pity that the child is currently embroiled in the matter of the winged tiger. The entire continent is searching for him. Although he's hidden overseas, none of us know whether he's in danger or not. I just hope that the child can return safely. The joy on Chanyang Zhu Yunkong's face gradually vanished when he heard that. He frowned and said, The matter of the winged tiger is indeed a problem. It's related to far too many things. If my great-grandson wants to return to the Tianyuan continent, he'll have to hand over the winged tiger unless he possesses the strength to contend against the protector clans. Bai Hai and Chanyang Zhu knew each other's identities long ago. In terms of status and seniority, they were both Jianqin's great-grandfathers. Although they were of different ages, they had become in-laws because of their relationship with Jianqin. At this moment, Mingdong, Dugu Feng, Little Fatty, and Tai Ta gathered together in a garden within the imperial palace of Flame City. Unknowingly, a few years have passed just like that. I wonder where Jianqin is right now and how he's doing, Mingdong murmured to himself. Not only had Mingdong's strength increased by a lot during the past few years of secluded cultivation, but his entire bearing had changed as well. Compared to before, Mingdong was much less impatient and much more composed. He seemed to have become much more steady and mature. Don't worry, he'll be fine, a cold voice rang out. The person who had spoken was the cold and arrogant Dugu Feng. Dugu Feng was the same as before. He had not changed at all. Today is an important day for Flame City. As the first city in the history of the Tianyuan continent to be forged from tungsten alloy, the news of Flame City has already spread across the entire continent. It's impossible for Jianqin to not know. Do you think Jianqin will make it back in time? Little Fatty spoke as well. His voice was filled with eagerness. Not a single bit of fat could be seen on Little Fatty's body now. His former chubby figure had vanished long ago, and he had become much more lean and lean. Little Fatty's talent was very great. In the past, his talent had been suppressed because Uncle Xiao did not want him to participate in the matters of the Tianyuan continent. He only wanted him to live a peaceful life. Now that he began to focus on cultivation, his rate of improvement could be described as divine. Although it was nowhere close to Tai Ta's level, it was still incomparable to ordinary people with outstanding talent. Once Jianqin comes back, I'll definitely have a proper battle with him. I want to see whether I'm stronger or Jianqin is stronger, Tai Ta said with a muffled voice. Tai Ta, who was sitting there like a mountain of flesh, said in a low, muffled voice. His eyes flashed with excitement. Tai Ta was currently the strongest person in the group. Even Mingdong was not Tai Ta's opponent. In particular, Tai Ta's brute force was even more terrifying than magical beasts. Tai Ta, if you want to fight with Jianqin, you better work hard on increasing your strength to Saint Ruler first. You may be very powerful, but there's an insurmountable gap between Saint Ruler and Heaven Saint Master. Mingdong teased. I'm not afraid. I feel like I can defeat regular Saint Rulers now. Once Jianqin comes back, I'll definitely spar with him. I want to see just how great of a difference there is between me and him. Back when Jianqin and I were in Kargath Academy, the difference between our strength wasn't so great. I don't want to be left too far behind by Jianqin. Tai Ta was filled with confidence. He could not help but think about the time he spent in Kargath Academy with Jianqin. He could not help but smile foolishly. After spending half a day, Vice City Lord Yu, who was busy receiving guests from all directions, finally had some time to rest. At this moment, Sima Yu, who was dressed in a purple robe, was lying on a chair, rubbing her temples tiredly. As the Vice City Lord of Raging Flame City, she had to personally welcome all the people who had come to congratulate her. As a result, she was completely exhausted. After a few years, Yu had also changed a lot. She was much more mature now. Her face was still as beautiful as before. Her beauty was enough to cause the downfall of a city. Countless men would be moved by her. Furthermore, one could faintly feel a unique aura from her body that belonged to a superior. After managing the flame mercenaries for so many years, Yu's presence had silently changed as well. Sister Yu, Lian, is really happy. The day of our flame city, standing on the Tianyuan continent, has finally arrived. We've been looking forward to this day for many years, and it's finally happening now. A gentle voice sounded out as Bai Lian, dressed in a luxurious dress, ran over with an excited look on her face. Yu slowly sat up straight and said, "The people who have come this time have far exceeded my expectations. It's just that—" Yu hesitated as she frowned slightly. "Sister Yu, it's just what?" Bai Lian blinked her bright eyes as she asked curiously. "It's just that for some reason, I suddenly feel uneasy, as if something bad is about to happen," Yu replied. Bai Lian was stunned when she heard that. She furrowed her brows in thought and said, "Sister Yu, I think your worries are unnecessary. Who on the Tianyuan continent doesn't know that our flame mercenaries have the support of a protector clan? I don't think there's anyone who dares to make trouble for us." "That's true, but why can't I calm down?" Yu murmured as she sank into her thoughts. Bai Lian rolled her eyes and giggled. "Sister Yu, don't tell me you're thinking about my brother." Yu blushed slightly. She pretended to be angry and said, "Stop talking nonsense." At this moment, a large group of people had suddenly appeared 20 kilometers away from Flame City. There were so many of them that they were so densely packed that one could not see the end of them. There were at least several million of them. They formed a fan-shaped formation as they rapidly advanced towards Flame City. They were aggressive and had come with ill intentions. At the very front of the group, there were over 20 people of various ages riding Class 5 magical beasts toward Flame City. Every single one of them seemed extremely ordinary. They did not radiate with any energy at all, as if they were ordinary people who did not know how to cultivate. However, at a closer glance, it was not difficult to tell that they were extraordinary. Every single movement of any one of them seemed to contain an indescribable truth of the world, as if they could draw upon the energy of the world. All of them were hermits who had reached Saint Ruler at the very least. At the very center was a young man who seemed to be in his 20s. His eyes were cold as he sneered. A powerful killing intent radiated from his body at all. He was Bai Lian. King Bai Lian, there are countless experts gathered in Flame City right now. Are you sure that those experts won't assist the flame mercenaries against us if we take action right now? An old man beside Bai Lian said with a heavy voice. He was stern. "Don't worry. I have a joint order from the 10 protector clans. Unless those hermits and ancient clans don't want to remain on the Tianyuan continent anymore, I'd like to see if they dare to disobey the orders of the 10 protector clans," Bai Lian sneered. The king sneered, but his gaze never left the majestic, raging Flame City. His eyes were filled with hatred and resentment. Chapter 939. This time, in order to take down Raging Flame City in one fell swoop, Bai Wang had made ample preparations. First, he used his father's relationship with Yi Yuan School's Grand Elder to convince the other guardian families of the 10 great guardian families to support him. Afterward, he personally traveled across the continent and convinced over 20 peak mercenary groups. These peak mercenary groups were all comparable to hermit clans, possessing a history spanning thousands or even thousands of years. They possessed great foundations and were powerful. Not only did they possess saint rulers, but they also possessed over 100,000 people. Therefore, when these 20 or so mercenary groups passed through the space gate personally set up by his father and the supreme elder of Iyuan school, they formed the current lineup. The total number of people had already reached several million, and every one of them was an elite. Their fighting strength wasn't weak, and their numbers were several times that of the Raging Flame mercenary group. Due to the fact that there were many experts gathered in Flame City right now, the presences of the experts were rather chaotic. As a result, the experts of the Flame mercenaries did not discover Bijuan's arrival. Only when Bijuan Wang and his saint rulers arrived within 10 kilometers of the city walls did the people on the walls discover them. They immediately notified the commander on the walls. The commander on the walls was a Heaven Saint Master. He wore armor completely forged from tungsten alloy. He arrived before the walls and stared at the large group of people slowly approaching from the horizon. There's actually so many people. Looking at their formation, they've clearly come with ill intentions. It's nothing good. Do they still want to take the city that belongs to us? Don't they know that the Raging Flame mercenaries have a powerful family backing them? The commander stationed on the city wall sneered. His eyes were full of mockery. He immediately turned to a person beside him and said, "Endora, Deputy, you stay here. I'll go inform the Vice City Lord." "Yes, sir." The commander quickly made his way to the Imperial Palace at the very center of the city. He reported everything that had happened to the Vice City Lord Yu. By the time Sima Yu received the news, King Bai Er's army of a few million mercenaries had already arrived 5 kilometers away from Raging Flame City. At such a close distance, all the experts in Raging Flame City could sense their arrival. Many people revealed looks of shock and uncertainty. Currently, there was no one on the Tianyuan continent who did not know that the Flame mercenaries had the support of the Chanyang clan and Mercenary City. With such a great background, there was no organization that dared to provoke the Flame mercenaries. Otherwise, the Flame mercenaries would not have been able to monopolize the tungsten alloy mine for so long. It would have been split up between the Hermit and Ancient clans long ago. Yu's expression immediately turned solemn when she found out that an enemy had invaded. She had a bad premonition long ago and knew that the ribbon-cutting ceremony in Raging Flame City would not be so peaceful. At the same time, she was even more certain that Raging Flame City was currently a gathering of dragons. Those who dared to cause trouble at this time were definitely not simple people. They must have prepared a foolproof plan. Yu placed great importance on this matter. She did not dare to be careless at all. After receiving the news, she immediately contacted the experts of the Flame mercenaries. Afterward, she quickly made her way to the city walls under the accompaniment of Changyang Zuyunkong, Baihai and Jeditai. At this moment, the several million mercenaries had silently stopped in an empty area 5 kilometers away from the city. All that could be seen was a dense mass of heads as they radiated with surging presences. The 20 or so saint rulers that made up the mercenaries rode, class 5 magical beasts, standing at the very front of the group. Although the gates of the city were wide open, Baihai and the others were in no hurry to attack. Before attacking the city, they needed to deal with the experts gathered in the city first. They needed to cut off the reinforcements of the Flame mercenaries and isolate them. If the Flame mercenaries did not have the assistance of the Hermit and Ancient clans, they would not be able to defeat the mercenaries gathered by Baihai with their strength alone. Raging Flame City's Vice City Lord, Yu, stood on the city wall expressionlessly. Her eyebrows were furrowed together, and her expression was incomparably solemn. She knew that the bad premonition in her heart had finally arrived. Beside Yu, Chanyang Zuyunkong, Baihai Jetta, and Tai stood side by side. They all looked at each other. He stared fiercely at the black mass of mercenaries in front of him. "State your names. Why have so many people gathered here during the ribbon-cutting ceremony? Please state your intentions," Baihai called out sternly. Baihai shouted in a deep voice. His loud voice was like thunder exploding in the sky, reverberating continuously between heaven and earth. spreading to a radius of tens of kilometers. Ha 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 ha, you can call us the Extinguishing Alliance. I'm sure you already know why we've gathered so many people here. Before long, the first city forged from tungsten alloy on the Tianyuan continent will belong to our Extinguishing Alliance, King Bida laughed. His eyes were filled with madness. Humph, don't even think about taking over our flame city. Yu's beautiful face was filled with anger. She was extremely furious. Flame City was a mission that Jianqin had given them before he left. It was Jianqin's wealth. Now, that Flame City had just been completed. How could she allow someone to take away the city that they had built after so many years of painstaking effort? Bai Hai coldly stared at Yu and evilly smiled. You must be the Gland Princess of the Kingdom of Jessin, Yu. You're Jianqin's fiancée in name. Humph, this Jianqin's luck with women isn't bad. He actually managed to capture the heart of such a beauty. But what a pity, from today onwards, his fiancée belongs to me, the Bayan King. Everything he took from me, all the pain and humiliation he brought me, I, the Bayan King, will repay him 100-fold. Next to the king's voice was filled with malice. His voice was so loud that it spread throughout the entire raging flame city. Naturally, his insults towards Yu were heard by everyone. Flame City immediately fell into an uproar. At that moment, whether it was the guests who had come for the ribbon-cutting ceremony or the members of the Flame Mercenaries, they all put down what they were doing and hurried towards the city walls. A few of the stronger people even took to the air. Bang! Ming Dong, who was seated in a pavilion in the imperial palace, smashed the stone table before him to pieces with a single punch. He furiously roared, "Who is this bastard? How dare he insult my brother's fiancée? I, Ming Dongjue, will never forgive him. Let's go take a look and see who's insulting my sister-in-law. I, Tai Ta, will tear him to pieces." The burly Tai Ta stood up as well. His face was filled with anger. Now that Jianqin isn't here, we can't just watch as someone insults his fiancée. Let's go teach that person a lesson, Wang Yifeng said angrily. Wang Yifeng said with a face full of indignation. Soon after, he put his hand in his mouth and blew a loud whistle. Immediately, a 5-meter long flying magical beast flew over from the distance and stopped in front of Wang Yifeng. Xiao Hei, fly to the city walls. Someone's come to cause trouble. We have to teach them a lesson. Wang Yifeng directly leapt onto the back of the flying magical beast. It immediately flapped its wings and rose into the air, flying towards the city walls. Afterwards, Ming Dong and the others all hurried to the city walls as well. Grandpa June, Granny Wang. The Flame Mercenaries seem to have encountered some trouble. I wonder who's bold enough to come cause trouble at a time like this. A woman who was resting in the imperial palace spoke out in a lively voice. Her voice was extremely pleasant, making people feel numb and seductive when they heard it. If someone did not have a firm heart, they might even be bewitched by her voice. The woman was Tianmu Ling of the ancient Tianmu clan. Is there anyone on the continent who doesn't know about the powerful backing of the Flame Mercenaries? The person who dares to cause trouble at a time like this is either an idiot or has made sufficient preparations. They don't fear the backing of the Flame Mercenaries at all. This matter might not be as simple as it seems. Let's go take a look, said Tianmu Ling's Grandpa June before the three of them left the imperial palace and hurried to the city walls. The people in the city surged. All of them hurried toward the city walls. The streets were filled with people, and there were even many Heaven Saint Masters and Saint Rulers flying in the air. Basically, all of them were guests who had come to participate in the opening ceremony of the city. As countless people landed on the walls, the wide walls of Flame City became a sea of people in the blink of an eye. They were densely packed with people in all sorts of attire. Ming Dong and the others all gathered around Yu. They sternly stared at the army of several million mercenaries 5 kilometers away and asked, "Who are they and what do they want?" Yu's face had become pale from anger. She replied, "They call themselves the Flame Extinguishing Alliance and want to steal our Flame City." Yu Yu's voice was filled with uncontainable anger. Flame Extinguishing Alliance. As the name suggests, isn't it an alliance that wants to destroy our flame mercenaries? They've clearly come for us. How bold of them. Mingdong's face became extremely sunken. What a powerful group. I can't even see through the 20-odd people at the very front. Don't tell me they're all Saint Rulers, Little Fatty said with a heavy voice. Tai Ta's eyes lit up when he heard that. He immediately became eager as battle intent surged in his eyes. He said in a muffled voice, "Saint Rulers, huh? I'd like to see just how powerful they are. They've clearly come prepared. We can't be careless," Baihai said sternly with a frown. Changyang Zhu Yunkong's face was icy cold. His gaze was extremely sharp as he sternly said, "Flame City belongs to my great-grandson. The things of Changyang Prefecture can't be taken by just anyone." Chapter 940. The Bijui King. It seems like the Felicity Empire has a king called the Bijui King. Is he one of the 9 kings of the Felicity Empire, one of the 3 great empires on the continent? So what if he is? The 3 great empires may be powerful, but they're only at the level of ancient clans. How can they contend with the flame mercenaries who have the support of the protector clans and mercenary city? The Bijui King is going to be in big trouble this time. He's fated to come with so many people and return in disgrace. If the flame mercenaries were easy to chew up, they would have been split up by the ancient clans long ago. The Bijui King is one of the 9 kings of the Felicity Empire. It's impossible for him to not know about the background of the flame mercenaries with his status. Yet he still dares to come. Does he have something to rely on? Everyone discussed as they constantly guessed and expressed their opinions. However, even more people stood there as if they were watching a show. They did not plan on interfering at all, waiting for the final result. Yu Yu and the others immediately revealed extremely ugly expressions when they heard the Bijui King's arrogant words. Changyang Zhu Yunkong flew into the air and hovered 100 meters above the walls. He radiated with a tremendous presence, causing the clouds to churn in the sky. "Just the few of you are nowhere near enough if you want to take Flame City. I wonder how many Saint Kings you've invited." Jianchen frowned and said. Changyang Zhu Yunkong bellowed out. His voice boomed through the surroundings, and the presence he gave off made him fearless of the world. Although Changyang Zhu Yunkong's strength remained at the first heavenly layer of Saint Ruler, unable to break through, many Saint Rulers who far surpassed him could not help but look at him in a new light from the presence he radiated at this moment. Even the few Holy Emperor experts hidden in the crowd could not help but look at him curiously as they murmured to themselves. The Bijui King looked at Changyang Zhu Yunkong, and a cold light flashed through his eyes. He coldly said, "May I ask who you are? State your name." "Old man, Changyang Zhu Yunkong." Changyang Zhu Yunkong was emotionless. "What? He's actually called Changyang Zhu Yunkong? Is he from the protector clans of Changyang Prefecture? It's rumored that the protector clans of Changyang Prefecture are split into the Zhu, Yuan, and Qing branches. Is he from the Zhu branch of the protector clan of Changyang Prefecture? He's actually a member of the protector clans. I never thought that there would be people of the protector clans in Flame City. With the protector clans of the protector clans, the Bijui King is king is king. Is he going to return?" Changyang Zhu Yunkong's identity was exposed before everyone, which immediately led to an uproar. The protector clans had always been clans that only existed in legends on the Tianyuan continent because they were the most powerful clans on the continent. They had existed since ancient times and possessed a long history, spanning hundreds of thousands of years or even millions of years. Their heritage was so great that no one could compare to them. They had not appeared in the world for a long time, and it was difficult to find traces of them for hundreds or even thousands of years. Even if they appeared, they would not be easily exposed to the world. Only a few hermit families and ancient families with thousands of years of history knew of their existence. However, without any exception, all the hermit clans and ancient clans who knew of their existence felt respect from the bottom of their hearts for the protector clans. This was because the protector clans had always played an important role as protectors of the Tianyuan continent. They never interfered with any of the conflicts on the continent, but they always silently protected the peace of the continent, stopping the invasions of the beast, god continent, and other races. It was exactly because of this that the protector clans possessed irreplaceable statuses in the hearts of all the hermit clans and ancient clans. They were revered by everyone. However, this time, because of the winged tiger, the experts of the beast god continent had come to invade the Tianyuan continent, forcing the protector clans to appear. As a result, the news of the protector clans had already spread across the entire continent. Everyone knew about them. Everyone's gazes immediately became attracted as soon as Changyang Zuyunkong's identity as a member of the protector clans was revealed. Everyone's gazes toward Changyang Zuyunkong underwent a drastic change. There was respect, envy, and various other emotions. The king looked at Changyang Zuyunkong and sneered. Since there's a member of the protector clans present, it can't be any better. I have something to show everyone next. I'll also ask the protector clans to verify the authenticity of this news. The king took out a medallion and immediately channeled a strand of saint force into it. The token suddenly emitted a dazzling light. Soon after, a formless wave of consciousness spread out rapidly in all directions, with Biju Wang as the center. It spread out for a distance of 1,000 miles before gradually disappearing. At that moment, all the saint rulers, including Changyang Zuyunkong, closed their eyes. The pulse from the medallion was a message. It had been created through a special secret technique by the protector clans. Anyone who had reached Saint Ruler could clearly see the contents of the message. The Saint Rulers of the Extinguishing Alliance who stood in the same row as Bijin obviously received the message from the medallion as well. They all smiled happily. At that moment, their lingering fear for Flame City had completely vanished. Impossible. How can this be? Changyang Zuyunkong slowly opened his eyes as his complexion became very ugly. Bai Hai, Deity, and all the other saint rulers who had come to attend the ceremony opened their eyes as well. Their expressions all changed. They were no longer able to maintain their previous composure. Deity and Bai Hai's complexions became extremely ugly. They were so sunken that they almost dripped with sweat. In particular, Bai Hai's eyes were filled with uncontrollable anger and reluctance. Only saint rulers could sense the mental fluctuations from the token. That was why Ming Dong and Yu Yu, who were standing on the city walls, had no idea what was going on. Great-grandfather Bai Hai, what's going on? Yu Yu asked anxiously. Everyone's expressions made the bad premonition in her heart grow stronger. The 10 protector clans want to destroy our city, Bai Hai said with a heavy voice. What? The 10 protector clans want to destroy our city? Why is that? Yu Yu's complexion drastically changed as she immediately paled. The city lord of Flame City is a member of the 10 protector clans, and there's an agreement between the 10 protector clans that they cannot interfere with the matters of the Tianyuan continent. As a result, the existence of Flame City has gone against the agreement. They want to make our city disappear and warn the other clans to not help us fend off any attacks, Bai Hai explained. What? How can this be? Sima Yu Yu's beautiful face turned pale without a trace of blood. She simply couldn't accept this. The 10 protector clans were the most powerful and ancient clans on the Tianyuan continent. If they wanted someone to disappear, even ancient clans with experts like the Holy Emperor would not be able to escape, let alone the flame mercenaries who were nowhere near as powerful as the ancient clans. The flame mercenaries had completely relied on the deterrence of the 10 protector clans from Chanyang Prefecture and Mercenary City to occupy the tungsten alloy mine. If they lost the protection of these two organizations, it would have been impossible for the flame mercenaries to hold onto the tungsten alloy mine for so long. Sigh, I never thought that something like this would happen. The 10 protector clans have personally spoken. No one dares to help the flame mercenaries now. Tianmu Ling's grandfather Jun let out a long sigh. His face was filled with helplessness as he slowly pulled Tianmu Ling back. He had already decided not to participate in this matter. Tianmu Ling's expression became extremely complicated as she silently stood beside Grandpa Jun. She knew that no one could help the raging flame mercenaries this time. Otherwise, it would be challenging the dignity of the 10 great protector families, and the consequences would be unthinkable. There had never been a single person or clan that dared to challenge the dignity of the 10 protector clans on the Tianyuan continent since ancient times. Afterwards, the experts who had originally come to participate in the ribbon-cutting ceremony all backed away. They did not participate in this matter. In the blink of an eye, Yu Yu and the others were isolated by the crowd. Only the Huang clan's ancestor, Huang Tianba, was still standing in the same place, but the light in his eyes was flickering. He seemed to be hesitating. The king knew that the time was ripe when he saw the situation on the walls. As a result, he waved his hand and called out, "Kill! Take this precious city! Brothers, let's go! Everyone kill! Charge! Seize raging Flame City! Flame City will belong to us in the future. Brothers, charge! Protect Flame City with our lives! Protect our home with our lives! Protect our home with our lives! We can't let it fall into the hands of others. Flame City is the glory of the flame mercenaries. We can't let others take it away. Kill!" Cries shook the surroundings as the several million people from the Extinguishing Alliance charged toward the city like a flood. None of them were weak, so the 100-meter-tall walls were unable to stop them. A few Earth Saint Masters leapt onto the walls and engaged in a great battle with the flame mercenaries. Although there were over 100 magical crystal cannons on the walls of Flame City, they had never expected that they would be attacked during the ribbon-cutting ceremony. As a result, the cannons had not been charged with magic cores, so they had been reduced to mere decorations. Ming Dong, Du Gufeng, Little Fatty, Wang Yifeng, Tai Ta, and many other experts of the flame mercenaries all joined the battle. As they swung their saint weapons, they constantly killed the members of the Extinguishing Alliance. In the blink of an eye, they were all covered in blood. Yu Yu and Bai Lian stood together as they stared at the surroundings with pale white faces. Neither of them had thought that such a great change would occur during the ribbon-cutting ceremony. This day should have been a joyous and exciting day for the flame mercenaries, but in the end it turned into a scene of flesh and blood splattering across the ground. The ground that should have been filled with red fireworks was replaced by blood. The laughter that should have been filled with laughter was replaced by miserable cries. The dramatic change in front of them made Yu Yu and Bai Lian feel that it was hard to accept. Bai Hai Jietai and Chanyang Zhu Yunkong stood beside Yu Yu and Bai Lian. They stared at the 20 or so saint rulers who had yet to move with sunken faces. Chapter 941. Bai Hai Jietai and Chanyang Zhu Yunkong stood beside Yu Yu and Bai Lian. They stared at the saint rulers in the distance, who had yet to take action with sunken faces. Several kilometers away, Biju Wang coldly stared at Jietai, Bai Hai, and Chanyang Zuyunkong. Heavy killing intent appeared in his eyes as he coldly said, "The flame mercenaries only have you saint rulers. Fine, I'll kill all of you today and wipe out the flame mercenaries. And Jinshin's fiancé and his sister, they'll all belong to me from today onwards. Jianshin, I swear that I'll make you suffer so much that you'll wish you were dead. I'll make you regret everything you've done to the heavenly enchantress. This is the consequence of offending me." Bai Shoulder-to-Shoulder's hatred for Jianshin was so great that it was enough to drive Bai Shoulder-to-Shoulder mad. The source of this hatred came from the heavenly enchantress. Biju Wang leapt off his Class 5 magical beast and charged toward the walls as killing intent radiated from him. His eyes were bloodshot and filled with hatred and resentment, as if he had some deep grudge with Bai Hai and the others. At that moment, Biju Wang had completely transferred his hatred for Jianqin to the people around Jianqin. Bai Hai and the others immediately darkened when they saw Biju Wang charge in their direction. They called out, "The person who's coming is very powerful. He's already a 7th heavenly layer saint ruler. Yun Kong, take the 2 of them and leave. Deity, and I will stop him." Before he could finish his sentence, Bai Hai flew out, his saint force surging around him as he charged towards the Baiyan king. Behind him was Deity, who was wielding a saint weapon. The 2 of them wanted to block the Baiyan king's attack. "Great-grandfather, come back quickly. They have over 20 saint rulers." "We're not their opponent," Bai Lian anxiously called out from the walls. Her face was filled with worry. "Now is not the time to be stubborn. Let's leave this place first." With a wave of his hand, an invisible energy immediately wrapped around Yu and Bai Lian, taking them away. Although Chan Yanzu Yun Kong had become a saint ruler, he was still a 1st heavenly layer saint ruler. At the same time, the seal in his head had yet to be removed, so he was unable to use his full strength. He was not the opponent of those saint rulers who had been saint rulers for many years. Boom! A loud boom rang out as Bai Hai and Deity joined forces to engage in a fierce battle with King Primus Primus. As soon as the 2 sides clashed, an earth-shattering might erupted. In just one exchange, the void shattered and a pitch-black spatial fissure appeared. Violent shock waves of energy raged out from the epicenter of the battle, rapidly spreading in all directions. Thousands of people who were still fighting on the ground were thrown off their feet by the shock waves, injuring them. "You dare to fight me with just the 2 of you? You overestimate yourselves." Bibi Wang stared at Bai Hai and Deity. His voice was filled with disdain, and he did not use his saint weapon. Instead, he threw a punch at Deity. This punch contained an understanding of the mysteries of heaven and earth. The fist seemed to have completely melded into the void, becoming one with heaven and earth. Its speed was so fast that Deity could not dodge it at all. It hit Deity hard in the chest with lightning speed. Deity spat out a mouthful of blood as he fell from the sky. He was still a 3rd heavenly layer saint ruler, so the difference between him and Baiyan king was just too great. Bai and king had heavily injured him in a single clash. With Deity's withdrawal, Bai Hai was the only one left to fight Bai Hai king. Bai Hai had already reached the 6th heavenly layer of saint ruler, only 1 level lower than Bai Hai. Furthermore, Bai Hai had only broken through to the Saint King realm after comprehending the mysterious beast skin. His foundation was very solid. Although he was weaker than Bai Hai, he could still fight 300 rounds with Bai Hai Wang. He would not be defeated in a short period of time. The battle between Bai Hai and Bai shoulder to shoulder was extremely intense. Every time the 2 of them clashed, a loud, rumbling sound would erupt. It was like a thunderclap, deafening to the ears. Violent energy shock waves rushed out in all directions, causing the earth to crack and mountains to collapse. It was as if the end of the world had arrived. Flame City was also heavily impacted by the ripples of their battle. However, Flame City was constructed from tungsten alloy, so its defenses were comparable to the 7 capital cities of the Tianyuan continent. Although the battle between saint rulers was intense, it was unable to shake Flame City at all. Bai Hai and Bai Hai King fought as they flew into the sky. Very soon, they reached an altitude of 10,000 meters and became 2 tiny white dots. They were afraid that the ripples of their battle would injure too many people and cause the celestial decay to descend. As a result, they moved the battle far away. The people of the Extinguishing Alliance, which consisted of over 20 peak mercenary groups, continued to fight the Flame mercenaries. The experts from the various clans of the Tianyuan continent all watched from afar. None of them had any intentions of interfering. There was an insurmountable difference in both numbers and strength between the Extinguishing Alliance and the Flame mercenaries. As a result, the Flame mercenaries had already fallen to a disadvantage as soon as the 2 armies clashed. They were firmly suppressed by enemies several times their number, suffering heavy casualties. Ming Dong, Little Fatty, Wang Yifeng Dugafeng, and the others were also doing their best to kill the enemy. They were constantly killing the members of the Extinguishing Flame Alliance around them. However, the one who stood out the most amongst them was Tai Ta. Tai Ta was bathed in blood. His tall and sturdy body was still so eye-catching in the sea of people, like a moving mountain. Tai Ta's clothes were in tatters, while the axe in his hand had been dyed red with blood. It constantly dripped with blood. Every time he swung his axe, he would kill several people from the Extinguishing Alliance. No one could stop the might of Tai Ta's axe. Tai Ta was like a harvester, slaughtering his way through the people of the Extinguishing Alliance all by himself. The number of people who had died to his hands was already uncountable. Behind him was a path paved with corpses. Not only was Tai Ta extremely powerful, but his body's toughness was almost abnormal as well. He did not even try to dodge the attacks from the surroundings. He used his body to endure them all. Attacks as powerful as Earth Saint Masters could not even leave a scratch on Tai Ta's body. Even Heaven Saint Masters struggled to deal too much damage to Tai Ta. Tai Ta's body was so tough that it could actually rival Jianchen's chaotic body. The Heaven Saint Masters of the Extinguishing Alliance discovered Tai Ta's strength and worked together to attack him. However, as soon as they approached Tai Ta, they were all blown away by a swing of his axe. They all vomited blood and were heavily injured. There's a powerful one here. Get a few more people and kill him together, someone began to call for help. Very soon, over a dozen Heaven Saint Masters flew over from nearby. They formed an inescapable net around Tai Ta before shooting a powerful sword chi at him. Tai Ta remained calm. He held his axe in one hand and swung it in a circle. With just a swing of his axe, he easily destroyed the sword chi from the Heaven Saint Masters. The violent ripples of energy struck his majestic body, but they were unable to shake him at all. His feet seemed to be rooted to the ground as he stood there firmly. Tai Ta stomped off the ground and immediately flew toward a Heaven Saint Master with lightning-like speed. The blood-soaked axe in his hand shone with a faint golden light as he swung it toward the Heaven Saint Master's head. This axe seemed to contain some kind of heaven and earth principle, and it brought along a mysterious Tao rhyme as it suddenly chopped down from the sky. The Heaven Saint Master immediately raised his saint weapon above his head to block Tai Ta's attack. Ding! With a clear sound, the Heaven Saint Master's saint weapon was actually shattered by Tai Ta's attack. However, the axe did not slow down at all. It continued toward the Heaven Saint Master's head, cleaving his body in half. It was as fragile as tofu. The expressions of the other Heaven Saint Masters drastically changed when they witnessed this. Disbelief filled their faces. "Why, you're a saint ruler," a Heaven Saint Master said with a trembling voice. In their eyes, only a powerful saint ruler could destroy a Heaven Saint Master's saint weapon so easily. "I'm not a saint ruler," Tai Ta replied with a muffled voice. He then charged toward the Heaven Saint Masters with his axe. The axe flickered with a faint golden light. Every swing of the axe contained some sort of mysterious truths of the world, possessing great power. Even the sixth cycle Heaven Saint Masters were unable to block it. They were all cleaved in half by Tai Ta's attack with their saint weapons. In the blink of an eye, half of the Heaven Saint Masters had been killed by Tai Ta. All of them had been cleaved to death by a single swing of the axe. The remaining half of the Heaven Saint Masters were frightened out of their wits by Tai Ta's strength, so they began to flee for their lives. Tai Ta seemed to be certain that he had to kill them, so he chased after them with all his might. "Old Captain, save us!" A few frightened Heaven Saint Masters began to call for help. The saint rulers who had not taken part in the battle immediately noticed the situation. An old man moved slightly and arrived before Tai Ta in the blink of an eye. He coldly stared at Tai Ta and said, "Sir, you're quite skilled. However, the flame mercenaries are done for." Why don't you join our flame-extinguishing alliance? With your strength, you'll definitely be treated with great respect." Tai Ta completely ignored the old man's attempt to rope him in. Without saying anything else, he directly swung his axe at the old man. The old man's face turned cold, and with a thought, the space around Tai Ta froze, trapping Tai Ta's burly body inside, unable to move at all. Everyone below Saint Ruler is an ant. Old man can kill you as easily as flipping his hand. He only spared your life because he saw that you weren't weak. What do you think? Are you willing to join us? The old man arrogantly asked. His gaze toward Tai Ta was filled with disdain. As a Saint Ruler, he indeed did not take Tai Ta, who was only a 6th-cycle Heaven Saint Master, seriously. Tai Ta was stern. He angrily roared at the sky, and immediately a faint, golden light began to radiate from his body. Even the axe in his hand began to glow with a hazy golden light. Although it was very faint, it was still slightly more powerful than the Heaven Saint Masters he had killed earlier. Tower's frozen body suddenly moved. At that moment, his body seemed to be unaffected by the frozen space. He raised his axe high and switched from holding it with one hand to holding it with both hands. Immediately, an indescribably vast presence radiated from Tai Ta. At that moment, Tai Ta seemed to have fused with the axe, becoming a single entity. At that moment, he seemed to possess an indescribable charm, resonating with the world from afar. He had obtained a sliver of a mysterious power that originated from the world. Tai Ta took a step forward, and the axe above his head turned into a streak of golden light. He directly ignored the Saint Ruler's frozen space and swung down with lightning-like speed. How can this be? The Saint Ruler paled in fright. He found it difficult to accept that a person who was clearly only a 6th-cycle Heaven Saint Master could ignore his frozen space. However, what made him feel even more disbelief was that he actually felt a great threat from Tai Ta's attack. Chapter 942. Tai Ta's axe shot through the air with a faint, golden light, colliding with the Saint Ruler's blade. Boom! With a violent boom, the axe and blade violently collided in the air. Immediately, violent ripples of energy began to rapidly expand in all directions from the center of the battle. It blew away all the people within 1,000 meters. Only Heaven Saint Masters were able to stabilize themselves. As for the ground within a radius of 1,000 meters, a thick layer of soil was scraped up under the raging aftermath of this violent energy. Dust flew between heaven and earth, and Yen City filled the air, enveloping the entire battlefield. Tai Ta's body flickered with a faint, golden light. The violent ripples of energy struck him, but he actually did not move at all. He was as steady as a mountain. Tai Ta remained in the same posture as before. The axe in his hands was firmly pressed against the Saint Ruler's head. The Saint Ruler used his saint weapon to block Tai Ta's axe. His entire lower body had sunk into the ground, only exposing his waist. His face was rather pale, but it was mostly filled with shock and disbelief. Tai Ta was actually on par with a Saint Ruler as a 6th-cycle Heaven Saint Master, and from the looks of it, he even seemed to have the upper hand. The 20 or so Saint Rulers of the Extinguishing Alliance who had yet to participate in the battle discovered what was happening. Shock filled their eyes as their hearts filled with shock. He's clearly only a 6th-cycle Heaven Saint Master, yet he's actually able to take an attack from a Saint Ruler without being defeated. Just who is that person? He actually possesses such terrifying battle prowess, a middle-aged man in tight robes said with a heavy voice. His voice was filled with deep surprise. Lu Zheng's strength has already reached the 3rd heavenly layer of Saint Ruler. Even 1st heavenly layer Saint Rulers would struggle to take an attack from him without being injured. Just who is that person? He's clearly a Heaven Saint Master, yet he possesses such terrifying strength. And that person seems to be able to ignore Lu Zheng's frozen space. That's unbelievable. Just how did he do it? Did he use some kind of powerful ancient secret technique? The Saint Rulers of the Extinguishing Alliance all speculated. All of them found it hard to believe that Taita could match a third heavenly layer Saint Ruler as a sixth cycle heaven Saint Master. Everyone below Saint Ruler was an ant. This was a saying that had always been passed down on the Tianyuan continent, and no one had ever broken it. Today, they had actually witnessed someone break this legend that had been passed down for countless years. To them, this was simply an impossible miracle. Mingdong and the others obviously saw this as well. All of them widened their mouths as disbelief flooded their faces. Although they knew that Taita was very powerful, they had never thought that he would be so powerful that he could reduce a Saint Ruler to such a horrible state as a sixth cycle Heaven Saint Master. The experts of the hermit clans and ancient clans who were watching from afar also noticed Taita's extraordinariness. They all stared at Taita with flickering eyes. "Well done, Taita. Kill them all. Kill all these bandits who have invaded our homeland." Wang Yifeng's voice rang out from afar. It was filled with excitement. Taita immediately remembered why they had come when he heard that. Anger immediately flooded his face, and he bellowed out. Suddenly, he exerted force with his arms, and an extremely tremendous force surged out from his body. He actually pushed Lu Zheng another foot into the ground through the axe, leaving only his chest above the ground. Lu Zheng immediately became furious when he thought about how he, a mighty Saint Ruler, had been reduced to such a miserable state by an ant-like Heaven Saint Master. To him, this was a great humiliation that he would never be able to wash away. He was too ashamed to face anyone. This was because something so exaggerated had never happened on the Tianyuan continent. A hermit Saint Ruler had actually been pushed into the ground by a Heaven Saint Master. Lu Zheng could already imagine that his reputation on the Tianyuan continent would definitely skyrocket after this battle. However, it would not bring glory or status, but endless mockery and mockery. The more Lu Zheng thought about it, the angrier he became. In the end, he could not help but let out a roar that shook the heavens and earth. Saint Force surged out of his body as he used all his strength to push back Taita's axe that was pressing down on his head. His body immediately rose from the ground, leaving behind a meter-deep hole where he had been standing. "Junior, the old man will cut you to pieces," Lu Zheng angrily roared. Lu Zheng let out a furious roar. The machete in his hand was burning with raging flames. It was mixed with the rich power of heaven and earth, and it slashed toward Taita's head with lightning speed. This time, Lu Zheng had used his full strength. He had completely unleashed the strength of a third heavenly layer Saint Ruler without holding back at all. Taita showed no fear at all. He gripped his axe with both hands and swung it at Lu Zheng as well. The axe and blade collided, erupting with a great boom. Both of them were pushed back by the violent shock waves. Suddenly, an extremely powerful battle intent filled the surroundings. It seemed to be able to invade the blood of people, bewitching them. It affected everyone unknowingly, actually making the battle between the Flame Mercenaries and the Extinguishing Flame Alliance even more intense. Under the influence of the battle intent, both sides seemed to become completely engrossed in the battle. They forgot about pain and forgot about themselves. The only thought that remained in their minds was to fight, fight, fight. All the experts watching from afar were shocked. They could obviously sense the battle intent that filled the battlefield, so they all looked at Taita. This was because they could all clearly sense that the battle intent came from Taita. At this moment, Taita hovered 3 meters above the ground like a god of war. He radiated with a powerful battle intent. His imposing figure was just like an ancient god of war. He slowly raised the huge axe in his hand. The golden light on the axe grew brighter and brighter, condensing into a huge golden axe above his head in the blink of an eye. He then swung it toward Lu Zheng. With the swing of the axe, all the battle intent in the surroundings gathered. It fused with the axe from all directions at an unbelievable speed, causing the axe to become even more solid. Swish! The speed of the giant axe's chopping was very fast. A golden light flashed and arrived at the top of Lu Zheng's head. Then it instantly cut off his head. Lu Zheng did not move at all. A finger-sized crack had appeared on the ground between his legs. The crack was straight and several thousand meters long. Tai Ta slowly closed his eyes after the attack. Not only did the golden light around him show no signs of weakening, but it became even brighter. A battle intent that was much purer and thicker than before radiated from him once again, directly surging into outer space. A few strands of hair fell from Lu Zheng's head. Immediately afterwards, an extremely thin red line appeared on his forehead. The red line constantly extended, and in the blink of an eye, it extended from his forehead all the way to his neck. Only when it was covered by his clothes did it disappear. This was the blood that flowed from Lu Zheng's body. A golden light vaguely shone from the blood. It grew brighter and brighter. In the end, with a bang, Lu Zheng's entire body was split in half. He was dead. A third heavenly layer, Saint Ruler, had died, just like that. He had died to the hands of a sixth cycle heaven Saint Master. Everyone who was watching the battle from afar looked at this scene in a daze. Huge waves surged in their hearts, and they were extremely restless. Even though this had happened right before their eyes, all of them still found it hard to believe. They could not accept it. In their minds, all those below Saint Ruler were ants. This was an unchanging truth. It was impossible for Heaven Saint Masters to harm Saint Rulers, because Saint Rulers had already comprehended the mysteries of the world. All they needed to do was freeze space, and Heaven Saint Masters would be immobilized. They would only be meat on the chopping block. Yet now, a third heavenly layer Saint Ruler had been slain, so cleanly by a Heaven Saint Master right before their eyes. Moreover, he had died in such a horrible manner. All of them felt extremely shocked. Tai Ta hovered in the air with his axe in hand. The battle intent radiating from him constantly grew stronger, and the golden light from his body became brighter and brighter. This time, even a few Saint Rulers found it difficult to maintain their self-control. They felt their blood boil, flowing several times faster than usual. A powerful desire to battle actually rose up from the bottom of their hearts for some reason. They were tempted to find someone to fight to their heart's content right now. Unbelievable. The battle intent he gives off is actually affecting us unknowingly. What strange cultivation method is this? It's actually so terrifying, a Saint Ruler cried out. His voice was filled with fear. The other Saint Rulers were shocked as well. They stared at Tai Ta closely, wanting to see what he was doing. At the same time, a majestic, snow-white divine hall stood silently in a world of ice and snow in the Arctic. Inside the temple, a person covered in a layer of silver-white armor was sitting cross-legged in a secret room. Only a pair of tightly shut eyes could be seen. Suddenly, she slowly opened her eyes and calmly looked in the direction of the Tianyuan continent. She murmured to herself, "The warring gods have finally awakened. I wonder just what level the power of his bloodline has reached, and whether he can become a Grand Prime." Several 100,000 years ago, someone from the warring gods awakened. It's a pity that I couldn't interfere with the matters here, so he died here in the end. What a pity! What a pity! In the battle back then, the Grand Prime of the warring gods was slain by the Grand Exalt of the Sword Sect of Violet Heavens with the Azulite Sword. Yet here, the warring gods have actually joined forces with the successor of the Sword Sect of Violet Heavens. I wonder if this is a blessing or a curse. The great ice goddess was heavily injured by the Grand Exalt of the Sword Sect of Violet Heavens with the Azulite Sword, and she still hasn't recovered. I wonder if the successor of the Sword Sect of Violet Heavens is the reincarnation of the Grand Exalt from back then. Chapter 943. The current situation is a mess. I've waited here for 3 million years. Why has the Saintess appeared at a time like this? Why has the successor of the Sword Sect of Violet Heavens come here? And it's because of such a complicated relationship. There's no need to worry about the warring gods. Once he understands the truth, I think he'll make a wise choice. If he makes the wrong choice, he can only vanish from the world. The warring gods were born from the world anyway. Once this generation dies, the world will give birth to another generation of warring gods after a few 100,000 or even 1,000,000 years. The person whose entire body was covered in a layer of silver armor let out a low murmur. His voice was pleasant to the ears, but it was filled with coldness, without the slightest hint of emotion. Outside the city, the golden light around Taita had already turned into a dazzling sun, enveloping him. It was impossible to see his figure from the outside. Taita's presence continued to climb. His battle intent that filled the surroundings became more and more powerful as well. When his presence reached its peak, a tiny streak of golden light shot out from his body, piercing into the sky. It seemed to extend beyond the heavens. At the same time, the energy in the surroundings began to surge. The energy in a radius of 10,000 kilometers gathered from all directions before being sucked into Taita's body like a whale sucking in water. When the dense energy gathered around Taita, it actually formed a visible vortex. The battle between the Extinguishing Alliance and the Flame Mercenaries was still ongoing. Everyone was affected by Taita's will to fight. They forgot about themselves, forgot about pain, and no longer felt fear. The only thought that remained in their minds was to fight. Battle. Battle without end. Mingdong, Dugofeng, Wang Yifeng, Little Fatty, and so on were still affected. Only the saint rulers could control themselves as they slaughtered the Extinguishing Alliance. Tianmu Ling and the other juniors who had come with their seniors had already fainted. They had all been knocked unconscious by their seniors to prevent them from being affected by the battle intent as well. Taita's body seemed to be a bottomless pit. Large amounts of energy of the world were channeled into him, but he still did not reach his limit. He did not change at all. What is he doing? Just who is this person? He seems to be undergoing some sort of metamorphosis right now. Some of the Saint Kings in the surroundings guessed and stared at Taita in surprise. The process of Taita absorbing the yuan qi of heaven and earth lasted for almost an hour before it finally ended. The gathered yuan qi of heaven and earth slowly dissipated and finally returned to normal. Even the golden light from his body slowly receded, revealing Taita's tall and burly body. The blood on his body had already disappeared, revealing his skin with a faint golden luster. His majestic and firm muscles were bulging, giving people a strong visual impact. In between his eyebrows, there was a small and exquisite battle axe. Imprint, the battle intent that enveloped the world, slowly dissipated. It formed an invisible energy that was invisible to the naked eye and entered Taita's body. In the blink of an eye, the world returned to normal. Without the influence of the supreme battle intent, the 1,000,000+ people of the Extinguishing Alliance and the Flame Mercenaries all woke up. Immediately, a deep sense of exhaustion enveloped everyone, to the point where even their heads began to feel groggy. They seemed to have used up all the energy in their bodies when they had been immersed in the battle. Everyone could not help but think back to the battle they had been immersed in after waking up. All of their eyes were filled with confusion, while the expressions of the Earth Saint Masters and Heaven Saint Masters drastically changed. Their faces were filled with shock. They could clearly recall what had just happened. But it was only at this moment that they suddenly realized that when they were immersed in the great battle, they couldn't control themselves at all. It was as if their bodies and souls were being secretly controlled by someone else. Affected by this, the people of the Extinguishing Alliance and the Flame Mercenaries no longer had the heart to continue fighting. They all stopped and returned to their own camps, leaving behind the corpses and the blood-soaked ground as a testament to the devastation of the battle. However, no one paid attention to the battle at this moment. Without exception, all of their gazes were gathered on Taita. Taita slowly landed on the ground. Even though the supreme battle intent that filled the surroundings had dispersed, an extremely powerful presence still radiated from him. His long hair fluttered despite the absence of wind as a golden light flickered on his burly, golden body. An extremely powerful and violent energy would radiate from him from time to time. Although he just stood there casually, his stalwart figure made all the saint rulers present feel extremely pressured. At this moment, he seemed like a war god that stood in the world. He gave off the feeling that he was undefeatable. The tremendous presence that radiated from him was no weaker than a saint ruler's. Has he broken through? His presence is already comparable to a hermit saint ruler. Is he a heaven saint master or a saint ruler? Was that seen from before the process of him breaking through to saint ruler? Without the descent of the mysteries of the world, without the 5-colored rainbow clouds, is he a saint ruler or not? Whether it was the hermit saint rulers of the various large clans or the supreme experts of the Holy Emperor, they all thought to themselves. They could all sense that Taita was powerful before, but he was only a heaven saint master. Now he actually possessed the might of a saint ruler after what had happened earlier. Without the descent of the mysteries of the world, without the 5-colored rainbow clouds, was he breaking through? Or had he been hiding his strength the entire time? A figure fell from the sky. The battle between Bai Hai and Bai Wang had already ended. In the end, Bai Hai was no match for Bai Wang and was heavily injured. He fell from the sky as blood constantly spurted from his mouth. Bai Wang's face was filled with killing intent as he chased after Bai Hai from the sky. He swung his saint weapon, sending a powerful sword chi at Bai Hai. Heavily injured, Bai Hai's strength had been greatly reduced. He struggled to block Bai Wang's sword chi, causing his injuries to worsen. Biju Wang quickly caught up to Bai Hai and used space freeze to imprison Bai Hai's figure. The holy weapon in his hand emitted powerful energy fluctuations as it mercilessly pierced towards Bai Hai's head. Mysteries of war, space breaker. Taita let out a low growl. The giant axe in his hand emitted a faint golden glow as it chopped down at King Bai in the air. A huge axe visible to the naked eye tore through space and flew toward Bai Wang, infused with an extremely pure battle intent. When the axe collided with Bai Wang's spatial freezing, the space immediately shattered. However, the axe's momentum did not decrease at all as it continued to swing toward Bai Wang. Bai Wang's eyes flashed as he gave up on attacking Bai Hai. Instead, he used his saint weapon to block the axe with a layer of formless, worldly energy. When the two collided, a loud rumble erupted. Bai Hai successfully escaped, but Bai Wang's figure was uncontrollably sent flying hundreds of meters away. Bai Wang's expression was calm as usual. His eyes shone with a sharp light as he stared at Taita below. He coldly said, not weak. Unfortunately, you're on Jianshan's side. You won't be able to escape death. As soon as he finished speaking, Bai Wang became one with the space around him. Controlling the power of space, he turned into a faint blur as he lunged at Taita. The saint weapon in his hand shone brightly as it emitted a powerful energy that caused space to tremble. Taita showed no signs of weakness. An extremely pure and powerful battle intent burned fiercely on his body, filled with a strong will to fight and an undefeatable spirit. Both his body and the axe in his hand shone with a golden light as he merged with the axe and slashed at Bai Wang with an unstoppable momentum. Mysteries of war, art of world breaker. Boom! Taita's axe and Bai Wang's saint weapon collided fiercely with a deafening explosion. Violent shock waves of energy wreaked havoc, turning the ground into a mess. After the collision, Bai Wang staggered back a dozen steps while Taita's majestic body left the ground and was sent flying. The golden light on his body dimmed for a moment. Bai Wang quickly stabilized himself and stared at Taita with astonishment. He exclaimed, "What powerful strength! You're clearly weaker than me, but you're able to force me back with brute force alone. What kind of cultivation technique is this? It's so strange." If one looked closely, they could clearly see that Bai Wang's right hand was trembling slightly. But soon, Bai Wang's face was filled with killing intent again. he said. "The more extraordinary you are, the more I can't let you live. Die." Bai Wang became one with the space around him and charged at Tai Ta again. In the blink of an eye, he caught up to Tai Ta and used spatial freezing to lock Tai Ta in place. His saint weapon stabbed out with lightning speed. Tai Ta's body shone with golden light as he ignored Bai Wang's spatial freezing and swung his axe again. But this time, the power of his attack was much weaker than before. After the collision, Bai Wang's body trembled violently, but this time he didn't even take half a step back. On the other hand, Tai Ta staggered back, leaving 2 deep footprints on the ground. "You can actually move freely in my spatial freezing." Bai Wang let out a cry of surprise. His voice was filled with shock, but he didn't hesitate in the slightest as he chased after Tai Ta and attacked again. Mysteries of war, chasing stars and moon. Tai Ta growled. Just as Bai Wang's saint weapon was about to reach him, his body suddenly disappeared and reappeared dozens of meters away. Even though Tai Ta dodged the attack, his left arm was still wounded by the saint weapon of the Shoulder Equal King. A golden liquid immediately flowed out from the wounds. What, golden blood? Bai Wang saw the golden blood flowing out from Tai Ta's wounds and immediately exclaimed. His face was filled with disbelief, as if he had discovered a new continent. How is this possible? How can his blood be golden? The group of saint rulers watching from afar also discovered Tai Ta's uniqueness and cried out in surprise. Tai Ta's expression suddenly changed. The giant axe in his hand suddenly disappeared. He immediately used another hand to tightly cover his wound, covering the golden blood that flowed out from the wound under his giant palm. His face was filled with anxiety. Chapter 944. The king stared at Tai Ta in a daze. He said, golden blood, golden blood. How can there be golden blood? Are you not a human? Who says I'm not a human? Aside from being taller than you, how am I not a human? Tai Ta panicked and hurriedly explained. This was what he worried about the most. He was afraid that others would say that he was not a human, but a monster, an outsider. At this moment, the space in the sky began to distort. A space gate rapidly formed and a middle-aged man in white robes walked out, tearing open a space gate. That's the Holy Emperor's ability. Noticing the space gate in the sky, all the saint rulers' hearts skipped a beat. They could already guess the person's strength. Ming Dong rejoiced when he saw the middle-aged man. He immediately flew toward him and yelled out, Uncle Tian, you finally appeared. The middle-aged man was the Grand Elder of Mercenary City, Tianjin. Several dozen experts immediately flew up from the crowd and steadily flew toward Tianjin. Without exception, they were all saint rulers from large clans on the continent. There were even a few experts who had reached the level of the Holy Emperor hidden among them. They stopped 50 meters away from Tianjin and clasped their hands at him. We greet the Grand Elder. The king also flew up from the ground and politely clasped his hands at Tianjin. He said, one of the 9 kings of the Farista Empire greets the Grand Elder. The king glanced at Ming Dong from the corner of his eyes from time to time. An extremely cold light was hidden in the depths of his eyes. Great Elder? Could he be the Great Elder of Mercenary City? A few saint rulers who did not recognize Tianjin guessed his identity. They all clasped their hands and bowed to him politely. Everyone, there's no need to be so polite, Tianjin calmly said to everyone. Tianjin's expression was calm as he spoke to everyone. His eyes immediately looked towards Ming Dong. His calm eyes contained some doubting as he said, Not bad. Your strength has improved very quickly over the years. Your cultivation speed is so fast that even your Uncle Tian was far inferior to you when he was your age. Ignoring Ming Dong's excitement, Tianjin's gaze landed on Tai Ta. When he saw Tai Ta's golden blood, his eyes immediately narrowed and he furrowed his brows. Golden blood, Tianjin muttered in a low voice. His eyes revealed a pondering expression. Immediately he waved his hand. Immediately, an invisible force wrapped around Tai Ta and flew him up. Finally, it stood in front of Tian Jian. Tai Ta, don't be afraid. This is my Uncle Tian. He won't hurt you, Ming Dong said. Tai Ta nodded as he stared at sky, soared anxiously. His hand gripped his wound tightly. However, the golden blood had already seeped through the gaps between his fingers. It was so eye-catching. Tian Jian stared at Tai Ta closely as he studied him. His brows were tightly furrowed as he became surprised and doubtful. Tai Ta, I never thought that you'd become so powerful. You can even kill saint rulers. Oh, right? What kind of powerful battle skills are the mysteries of war you use? The void-piercing technique and the mortal breaker technique. Why haven't I heard you mention them before? When did you learn such powerful battle skills? They should be high-level heaven-tier battle skills at the very least, right? Ming Dong asked as he stared at Tai Ta curiously. He was filled with doubt as to how Tai Ta could use such powerful battle skills. Tai Ta shook his head in confusion when he heard that. He said in a muffled voice, I don't know what's going on either. I suddenly learned them. What? You suddenly learned them? Ming Dong was stunned. Disbelief filled his face. Mysteries of war, mysteries of war. Tian Jian murmured as he thought hard. He felt like he had seen this term somewhere before. Suddenly, Tian Jian seemed to think of something. His face drastically changed as he stared at Tai Ta in shock. Disbelief filled his eyes. Mysteries of war, golden blood, and the imprint of a battle axe between his eyebrows. Isn't that the ancient records of the war god of the 100 races, a Ruijin? Aye. Is he the war god of the 100 races? Tian Jian's heart churned. Even with his mental fortitude, he struggled to remain calm after discovering Tai Ta's secret identity. Uncle Tian, what's wrong? Ming Dong noticed Tian Jian's sudden change in expression and immediately asked out of curiosity. The parallel-shouldered king, the saint rulers who had been paying attention to Tian Jian, and a few Holy Emperor experts noticed Tian Jian's loss of composure as well. They all felt curious, wondering just what had happened to make the Grand Elder of Mercenary City act so abnormally. Even though they were extremely puzzled, no one dared to ask as fearlessly as Ming Dong. Tian Jian sucked in a deep breath and slowly calmed himself down. At that moment, the way he looked at Tai Ta had undergone an overwhelming change. Ming Dong, is this your friend? Tian Jian asked Ming Dong. Yeah, Uncle Tian, Tai Ta is one of my few friends, and he's Jinshin's friend as well, replied Ming Dong. Tian Jian let out a sigh of relief as he smiled happily. However, he soon sighed inside. Sai, the ancient winged tiger and the war god of the 100 races have appeared once again. The beast god continent and the 100 races have both given birth to supreme experts, and Poseidon of the Sea Realm is still alive. Just where are the supreme experts of my Tian Yuan continent? At that moment, Tian Jian suddenly felt extremely uneasy. He was worried for the safety of the Tian Yuan continent. Out of the 4 great races of the world, 3 of them had given birth to supreme experts. Only the Tian Yuan continent had yet to produce one. If the same thing happened again in the ancient times, what power would the Tian Yuan continent have to contend against them? However, what made him feel slightly at ease was that both the winged tiger and the war god of the 100 races maintained good relations with Jianshin and Ming Dong. They had not become enemies. I wonder how Jianshin is doing. He reached Saint Ruler in 20 years. His talent is the most outstanding on our Tian Yuan continent right now, and he knows the barrier spirit. Is he the future hope of our Tian Yuan continent? Tian Jian thought of Jianshin with a second thought. He immediately felt eager. At this moment, Tian Jian's eyes suddenly narrowed. He said, Tai Ta, go to Mercenary City first. With that, Tian Jian did not ask for Tai Ta's opinion. With a wave of his hand, a powerful force immediately wrapped around Tai Ta, forcefully dragging him into the space gate behind him and disappearing. The expression of the king changed slightly when he saw the person he had to kill, Taita, being sent away by Tianjin. However, he said nothing. "Uncle Tian, what are you doing?" Mingdong looked at Tianjin in confusion. As soon as Mingdong finished speaking, the surrounding space began to distort violently. Afterwards, space gates appeared one after another. Experts of various ages walked out from the space gates. They were all from the 10 protector clans. At that moment, the people of the 10 protector clans gathered above Flame City. Although they were not the most powerful people in the clan, they were all supreme experts on par with the Holy Emperor. A space gate appeared beside Bai Jian as well. His father, Bai Yifei, walked out. Bai Yifei was rather pale and haggard. Back in the Sea Realm, he and the great elder of the Yuan sect had been injured by Genshin's god's descent. Even now they had yet to recover. Tianjin stared at the people of the protector clans calmly and gently said, "I never thought that all the people of the protector clans would come. Grand Elder, since Genshin is Changyang Shoten and Changyang Shoten is a member of the protector clans of Changyang Prefecture, the flame mercenaries he founded outside has already broken the rules set down by us protector clans. As a result, they must be eliminated. We are dealing with the matters of our clans right now, so I hope that Mercenary City will not interfere with the matters of our protector clans." A great elder of the Yuan sect clasped his hands at Tianjin. At this moment, another space gate appeared. 2 old men with white hair and ruddy complexions walked out. They stepped through the air and arrived before Tianjin with a single step. They were the 3rd and 4th elders of Mercenary City. "Grand Elder, our Mercenary City cannot interfere with the matters of the Tian Yuan continent. We cannot forget the rules set down by the city lord all those years ago," said the 3rd elder of Mercenary City. "Grand Elder, the rules set down by the city lord all those years ago state that he can only appear to stop large-scale internal conflicts when our Tian Yuan continent is under threat and prevent our strength from weakening. However, a small conflict like this is not enough for us to interfere. At the same time, this is an internal matter of the protector clans, so our Mercenary City cannot interfere," advised the 4th elder of Mercenary City. Mingdong immediately became worried when he heard that. He said, "Uncle Tian, we spent several years of effort and painstaking effort to build this city. You can't let it be taken away by someone else." Tianjin gently sighed. After a moment of thought, he said, "Mingdong, your Uncle Tian can't help you with this matter." "Uncle Tian." Mingdong refused to give up. He still wanted to plead. However, before he could say anything, Tianjin interrupted him. "All of this is because of Genshin. Only Genshin can change this situation. Once he has enough strength, he'll naturally take back the city. Mingdong, follow me back to Mercenary City. Cultivate well there, and I will use the rest of my time to teach you." With that, Tianjin forcefully took Mingdong away without even asking for his opinion. They returned to Mercenary City through a space gate. With Tianjin's departure, the 3rd and 4th elders left as well. They did not stay for too long. "Kong, come back with us." Changyang Zuyin Shao looked at Changyang Zuyin Kong. His voice was filled with helplessness. Changyang Zuyin Kong had already returned to the city walls with Yu Yu and Bai Lian. Hearing that, Changyang Zuyin Kong immediately became furious. He said, "Father, are you just going to watch the city your great-grandson spent so many years building be destroyed like this?" Kong, when Genshin was not a member of the Protector clan in the past, it had nothing to do with us no matter how powerful the organization he created was. However, since he's a member of the Protector clan now, he needs to follow the rules set down by the Protector clan. I hope you can understand Changyang Zuyin Shao side. It was not that he did not want to protect the city that was completely forged from tungsten alloy, but with the rules, he could not do anything about it. This was because once the rules were broken, their Changyang prefecture would face pressure from the other 9 protector clans.